Chapter 172. Careful. Dongli Qingqing was in Du Xiaofu's arms. As she looked up into the air and saw the giant bull hoof descending, her expression changed greatly. Damned bull! Du Xiaofu roared loudly. The aura of the golden-winged great rock within his body erupted like a volcano that had been suppressed for a long time. The mysterious symbols on the surface of his body surged, as if a pair of golden wings had materialized on his back. His speed instantly soared, and he broke free from the blazing destructive aura of the scarlet dark flaming bull. In the blink of an eye, his body shot out of the range of the giant bull's hoof. Rumble. The bull's hoof stomped down, causing the earth to quake and the mountains to shake. Giant cracks spread out in the rocks. Crack, crack, crack. Although Du Xiaofu had once again dodged the destructive bull's hoof, the moment the hoof landed on the ground, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted and soared into the sky, sweeping over Du Xiaofu's body and sending Du Xiaofu's body flying into the air, before falling to the ground. Pfft! Under the tremendous force of the impact, even more terrifying than the attack of a pulse spirit practitioner, Du Xiaofu's body was sent flying into the air. Blood immediately spurted out of his mouth, and he fell from the sky with Dongli Qingqing in his arms. Not good. Du Xiaofu's expression changed greatly. Profound qi surged all over his body. Borrowing the momentum of the fall, he turned his body in the air and forcefully smashed his back down. His body immediately fell onto a water chestnut rock. Bang bang bang. Under the tremendous force of the fall, the rock cracked into pieces. Dongli Qingqing, who was in Du Xiaofu's arms, was unharmed. Only a few drops of pale golden blood stained her exquisite face. However, Du Xiaofu himself once again spurted out blood, his injuries not light. Are you okay? Dongli Qingqing looked at Du Xiaofu and asked worriedly. At this moment, Du Xiaofu had fallen to the ground, causing her body to lean against Du Xiaofu's chest. The back of her head was tightly protected by his strong arms. I'm fine. Du Xiaofu had no time to care about the blood on his mouth and the injuries on his body. He quickly stood up with Dongli Qingqing in his arms. What a strange human. Why do you have the aura of my beast race? The scarlet-black flaming bull's enormous body paused for a moment, its lantern-like crimson-black eyes staring fixedly at Du Xiaofu. The terrifying aura of the faint golden light aura that had just erupted caused even it to feel fear. That kind of aura was so domineering that it felt as if it was facing a supreme king of the beast clan, almost causing it to be unable to resist. Hurry up and put me down. If you bring me along, both of us won't be able to escape. Dongli Qingqing slightly raised her head, her beautiful glass-like eyes looking at the resolute face that was close to her. At this moment, although the face was pale and the corners of his mouth were still dripping with blood, in her eyes, it was exceptionally amiable. I won't put you down. Hold on to me tightly. If we're going to leave, we'll leave together. Du Xiaofu hugged Dongli Qingqing in his arms, profound energy surging beneath his feet as he madly ran away once again. Dongli Qingqing looked at Du Xiaofu, as if she was hesitating in her heart. After that, her slender arms did not hug Du Xiaofu, but instead grabbed onto the purple robes on Du Xiaofu's chest. The glass-like shadows in her eyes rippled, as if they possessed a soul-stirring power. They were very far away, but for no reason, they added a kind of emotion, as if they were bottomless. Human, you won't be able to escape. A beam of energy fiercely descended. This time, Du Xiaofu was unable to dodge in time. Runes fluctuated, and the energy beam wrapped in black flames heavily smashed into his back. Bang! With a low muffled sound, countless runes and black flames shot out, exploding on Du Xiaofu's back. Swish! Du Xiaofu's body staggered forward, blood wildly spurting from his mouth. No matter how strong Du Xiaofu's body was, it would be difficult for him to withstand such a heavy blow from a Beast Lord realm expert. After a few steps, the rocks beneath his feet turned into fine powder, and his body fell forward. Bang! However, at the last moment, Du Xiaofu once again used all his strength to twist his body, causing his back to fall to the ground. He still allowed Dongli Qingqing, who was in his arms, to remain safe and sound. Why are you doing this? Looking at the blood-stained face in front of her, Dongli Qingqing's eyes were somewhat moist. With your strength, you simply can't contend against that Scarlet Crow Flame Bull. I shouldn't have let you take the risk with me. Don't worry, I have thick skin. I'm a man, so I have to take care of more women. Du Xiaofu smiled. The corners of his mouth were full of blood, and his smile was pale and powerless. You won't be able to escape. The Scarlet Crow Flame Bull's enormous body was like a mountain as it once again soared through the sky. It immediately enveloped the two of them, and a blazing and terrifying aura swept down. I'll block it. You quickly run. Otherwise, none of us will be able to escape. Dongli Qingqing loudly shouted. She struggled to stand up straight and looked at the enormous creature in the sky. She said to Du Xiaofu in a tender voice, I saved you, and you saved me. We're even now. Don't worry about me. If you don't leave now, you're dead. Don't leave now. Die. The Scarlet Crow Flame Bull roared. Its huge hooves once again soared through the sky and ruthlessly stomped towards the two of them. The terrifying aura descended, as if it could destroy the earth. Qi. The bow once again appeared in Dongli Qingqing's hand. She spat out a mouthful of blood onto the bow. Immediately, the bow seemed to have come alive. The mysterious runes on the bow flickered, and a dazzling green light spread out like the sun. A terrifying aura, as if an ancient god had awakened from a deep slumber, suddenly erupted. Eh! As a beast lord, the Scarlet Crow Flame Bull peeked at Dongli Qingqing's awakened aura at this moment. It didn't know why, but it felt fear in its heart. Its heart faintly felt uneasy, and that feeling of unease grew stronger and stronger. Following which, its huge hooves continued to stomp down. Tai Qing Demon Subduing Arrow. Dongli Qingqing shouted. A mysterious power seemed to have awakened within her body. She pulled the bow and an arrow of light completely condensed from runes appeared. She then released the arrow. Qi La. The rune energy arrow instantly shot out. Wherever it passed, it caused a large patch of space to distort, as if space itself was about to collapse. In a short instant, the rune energy arrow pierced through space, bringing with it traces of light that faintly distorted space. In an instant, it rushed under the huge hooves of the Scarlet Crow Flame Bull and blocked that terrifying huge hooves. Ka. The terrifying energy under the huge hooves of the Scarlet Crow Flame Bull was enough to destroy everything. However, at this moment, it was actually blocked by a single arrow from Dongli Qingqing. This caused the Scarlet Crow Flame Bull to be shocked. Plop! Although it blocked that terrifying huge hooves, Dongli Qingqing opened her mouth and spat out another mouthful of blood. She seemed to have no more strength left. The rune energy arrow of light began to be corroded by the black flame runes under the huge hooves, burning and collapsing. Finally, it completely shattered and disappeared. Rumble. After the huge hooves paused for a moment, it continued to press down on Dongli Qingqing and Du Xiaofu with a terrifying aura. When this foot landed, it was likely that the two of them would be trampled into meat paste. As the huge hooves landed, a destructive force swept out and pressed down. Dongli Qingqing's eyes were grave. At this moment, she had no other choice. Hurry up and run. I'll stop this evil beast. In the blink of an eye, Dongli Qingqing was pushed to the ground, and a terrifying wave of destructive heat swept out. The surrounding sand and stones were sent flying, and the ground was constantly cracked. Dongli Qingqing turned her head. Her pupils suddenly shrank. In her line of sight, she saw a purple-robed man. At this moment, he was holding up that huge, pillar-like hoof with both hands. His body was wrapped in a faint golden light, making him look like a god of war. The purple-robed youth used his physical strength to forcefully hold up that huge object. However, under the huge pressure, he spat out blood from his mouth. His body slowly sank. His feet had already sunk deeply into the rocky ground. The surrounding rocks cracked and turned into dust. "Hurry up and run!" Du Xiaofu shouted. The profound energy in his body surged out. His internal organs shook as if they were about to explode. However, at this moment, he was still bitterly holding on. "Despicable human. You're courting death. I'll trample you into pieces." The scarlet black flame bull roared. However, its eyes were filled with incomparable shock. A puny human was actually able to resist its foot. The domineering aura that erupted from his body faintly caused it to tremble in fear. "Bull, you're not strong enough. So what if you're in the Beast Lord realm? I've seen Beast King realm experts. Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Du Xiaofu shouted. Even though his feet had sunk, his body was still standing straight. Looking at the purple-robed youth in front of her, Dongli Qingqing was silent for a moment. Then, she struggled to get up. Her eyes were filled with tears. Her eyes were moist. Then, her delicate body slowly walked towards Du Xiaofu. When the huge hoof landed, it was already above her head. She lifted up both of her hands towards the huge hoof. "Why aren't you leaving? Hurry up and run. I can't hold on any longer." Du Xiaofu shouted. He was the clearest about the situation in his body. He could no longer hold on. Dongli Qingqing lifted up the huge hoof. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Following the collapse of the huge force, both of her feet sunk into the ground. She looked at Du Xiaofu with a smile on her lips. She pursed her red lips. Her voice was still clear as she faintly said, "I'm not leaving. I'll stay with you. I never thought that we would die under this bull's foot. I never thought that it would be with you." Du Xiaofu said. The corner of his bloody mouth curved into a bitter smile. Puchi. Then, under the burning power of the black runes, blood flowed from both of their mouths at the same time. Ka ka. The golden runes on Du Xiaofu's body also began to show signs of crumbling. Finally, he could no longer resist. In the end, he felt dizzy. Then, the vision of both of them turned black. Both of them fainted and fell to the ground. Boom! The huge hoof landed easily. The terrifying aura collapsed and directly stepped on the bodies of both of them. When the huge hoof landed, the bodies of both of them looked slender. Chapter 173. Qi. Suddenly, a layer of purple flames began to flicker on the surface of Du Xiaofu's skin, as if about to erupt at any moment. Moo! Just at this moment, a roar sounded from nearby. Just as the scarlet-black flame bull's hooves were about to trample Du Xiaofu's duo into pieces, it suddenly paused in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, the purple flames that were about to erupt from Du Xiaofu's body abruptly disappeared into his body. Qi! A streak of scarlet-black light appeared beside the scarlet-black flame bull like lightning. It was the other female scarlet-black flame bull. She looked at the Beast Lord's stage scarlet-black flame bull and let out a low neigh, as if saying something. At the same time, she pushed the scarlet-black flame bull's massive hooves away, tsk tisk. When Du Xiaofu regained consciousness, he felt something wet continuously licking his face. Am I dead? Startled, Du Xiaofu immediately opened his eyes. A small scarlet-black flame bull came into view, its little tongue licking his face. Moo moo. Seeing that Du Xiaofu had regained consciousness, the small scarlet-black flame bull stared straight at Du Xiaofu. When its eyes met with Du Xiaofu's, some curiosity flashed in its eyes. Then, it intimately burrowed into Du Xiaofu's embrace. It's that small scarlet-black flame bull. Am I not dead? Du Xiaofu was stunned. He blinked a few times and immediately struggled to sit up. However, his entire body was powerless, as if it had completely fallen apart. He could not muster even the slightest bit of strength. Your injuries are too serious, it's best if you don't move around. The familiar voice caused Du Xiaofu to be stunned. The worry in his heart was also put down. After which, he was gently helped to sit up. An exquisite elf-like face appeared in front of him. Her complexion was extremely pale, but she had already recovered some of her rosy complexion. It was Dongli Qingqing. Moo moo. The little scarlet crow flame bull kept snuggling intimately into Du Xiaofu's bosom. Its tongue kept licking Du Xiaofu's face. What's going on? Du Xiaofu stared at Dongli Qingqing's face, then looked around. At this moment, they were in the cave of the flaming scarlet crow bulls, but the two large flaming scarlet crow bulls were nowhere to be seen. You have been unconscious for 3 days. Because my clan has some special methods and talents, I seem to have recovered faster than you, so I woke up yesterday. However, you woke up very quickly. If it was an ordinary person, it would be difficult for them to wake up without 1 or 2 months. Dongli Qingqing explained to Du Xiaofu. Qi Yan and Yan Qi went out to look for elixirs. Scarlet Rock broke through to the Xiantian level when she was born, so she needed to find some elixirs to build her foundation. Qi Yan, Yan Qi, Scarlet Rock. Du Xiaofu's mind was suddenly confused. He was completely confused. Dongli Qingqing smiled at Du Xiaofu. Although her complexion was quite pale, she was still graceful. She looked at the little scarlet crow flame bull and said to Du Xiaofu, this little guy's father is called Yan Qi, and his mother is called Qi Yan. This little guy has already been named Scarlet Rock. It turns out that during the most dangerous time, it was this little guy's mother who came out to save you and me. I also learned all of this from Yan Qi after I woke up yesterday. Let me think about it. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's mind gradually became less chaotic. He gently stroked the little scarlet crow flame bull that was intimately burrowing into his arms. He asked Dongli Qingqing, in other words, this little guy's name is Scarlet Rock? Moo moo. The little scarlet crow flame bull thought that Du Xiaofu was calling it. The pair of little horns on its head immediately made a sound. It raised its head and stared at Du Xiaofu with a pair of scarlet black eyes. Its expression was adorable. The aura on this little guy's body seems to have changed a bit. Du Xiaofu felt that the aura on the little scarlet crow flame bull's body seemed to have changed a lot compared to when it was born. Its eyes, which were originally filled with scarlet black flames, now seemed to have a faint golden color. Du Xiaofu could feel that this aura was somewhat similar to his own. That's right, this little guy's name is Scarlet Rock because it's related to you. It's also because of this that we're still alive. Dongli Qingqing said to Du Xiaofu. Related to me, could it be? Du Xiaofu's eyebrows twitched slightly. In addition, he could feel the aura on the little scarlet crow flame bull's body. He instantly guessed that it was related to the fresh blood that he had fed the little scarlet crow flame bull. Dongli Qingqing looked at Du Xiaofu with curiosity in her beautiful eyes. She said, no wonder I always felt that the aura of your cultivation method was somewhat familiar. So it's related to the golden winged rock. The blood on your body is almost the same as the golden winged rocks. Du Xiaofu smiled and gently stroked the little scarlet crow flame bull's horns. He said to Dongli Qingqing, that's right, it is indeed related to the golden winged rock. Is it related to the golden winged rock in the Savage Beast mountain range? Dongli Qingqing looked at Du Xiaofu curiously and asked, didn't the golden winged rock and the purple flame demonic phoenix both self-destruct? Actually, I don't know what's going on either. I haven't found the answer until now. Du Xiaofu didn't hide anything from Dongli Qingqing. Up until now, he really didn't know what was going on either. This is really unbelievable. I'm afraid that even Master wouldn't believe it. Dongli Qingqing said and didn't ask any more questions. This little guy broke through to the Xiantian realm. Du Xiaofu felt the aura on the little scarlet crow flame bull's body and was quite surprised. To be able to break through to the Xiantian realm as soon as it was born, could this be a special technique of the scarlet crow flame bull? This matter is also related to you. According to Embermane, because this little guy swallowed your blood, many strange things happened. It even has the aura of the golden winged rock on its body. That's why it was named Scarlet Rock. Dongli Qingqing continued to speak to Du Xiaofu. The blood of the golden winged rock is extremely precious to other demonic beasts. Because of you, this little guy suffered when it was born. However, it also underwent a metamorphosis as soon as it was born and directly broke through to the Xiantian realm. Among the demonic beasts on the heavenly beast ranking, only the demonic beasts ranked at the top can break through to the Xiantian realm as soon as they are born. Therefore, Embermane and Qi Yan felt indebted to you and said that they didn't care about the black flame spirit ginseng. We are still alive now. So that's how it is. Du Xiaofu smiled. He had a general understanding of the situation. He stroked the little scarlet crow flame bull in his arms and said, "So it's related to me. No wonder you are so close to me. I don't know if you can compare to the demonic beasts on the heavenly beast ranking in the future." Moo moo. Qi Ping seemed to have sensed that Du Xiaofu was talking to it. Immediately, it let out a moo moo sound. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu remembered the matter of the black flame spirit ginseng. He fumbled around in his arms and said, "You mentioned the black flame spirit ginseng. I just remembered that I obtained the black flame spirit ginseng. However, why are there two of them?" As his voice fell, Du Xiaofu fished out a black flame spirit ginseng with leaves and handed it to Dongli Qingqing. It was about the size of a radish and its entire body was emitting a crimson-black brilliance. It was like a beautiful jade that flowed with a pure and holy radiance. A refreshing fragrance that caused ripples in one's heart spread out as it flowed with multicolored light. The numerous emerald green leaves were like emerald jade as they shone brilliantly and emitted a rich energy mist. A rich fragrance assailed the nostrils. It was likely that these leaves were extremely valuable and their medicinal properties were astonishing. I know that there are two of them. The black flame spirit ginseng usually grows in pairs. It is difficult for a single black flame spirit ginseng to grow. I originally intended to give you one of these black flame spirit ginseng. Perhaps it will be useful when you break through to the martial lord stage. Dongli Qingqing received the black flame spirit ginseng from Du Xiaofu's hands as a smile appeared in her beautiful eyes. That's impossible. What's going on? It was unknown whether Du Xiaofu had heard Dongli Qingqing's words as he continued to fumble around in his arms with a puzzled expression on his face. On the other hand, the little scarlet flame bull's gaze was currently attracted by the black flame spirit ginseng in Dongli Qingqing's hands. As if it had felt the fluctuations of an elixir, its saliva was about to flow out as it wanted to take a bite. What are you looking for? Upon seeing this, Dongli Qingqing's eyebrows slightly twitched as she asked Du Xiaofu. There's another black flame spirit ginseng missing. Du Xiaofu took out everything in his arms. There were quite a few qiankuan bags and the mountain-like stone. Apart from that, there was nothing else. Could it have fallen off? Dongli Qingqing asked Du Xiaofu. The black flame spirit ginseng was only the size of a small radish and could be held in one hand. It was very normal for it to have fallen off when one was careless. It was very likely that it had fallen off during the fierce battle with Yan Qi. It's impossible for it to have fallen off. Du Xiaofu was very certain that he had been especially afraid of dropping it. Therefore, he had kept it tightly in a small pocket within his purple robes. If it had fallen off, all the qiankuan bags on his body would have long fallen off, not to mention the black flame spirit ginseng that had not fallen off. Then you should look for it again. Dongli Qingqing said. Then, her eyes suddenly fell on the mountain-like stone that Du Xiaofu had just taken out. How could it not be? Du Xiaofu turned his body over and almost stripped naked, but he still could not find the remaining black flame spirit ginseng. Are you sure the other black flame spirit ginseng won't fall off? Dongli Qingqing suddenly asked Du Xiaofu with a serious expression. It shouldn't. Du Xiaofu nodded, but his gaze was extremely doubtful. He really did not have the other black flame spirit ginseng on him. Could it be that he had really lost it? Chapter 174. Dongli Qingqing's gaze landed on the bronze mountain peak rock that had landed calmly in front of Du Xiaofu. Her brows twitched slightly as she said softly, "If my guess is correct, the black flame spirit ginseng was eaten by it." Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's gaze immediately fell upon the mountain peak rock in confusion. "That's right, that's it. The black flame spirit ginseng should have been eaten by it." Dongli Qingqing nodded. This rock ate a spiritual medicine. Du Xiaofu was puzzled. No matter how hard he tried, he could not understand how a rock, no matter how hard it was, could eat his black flame spirit ginseng. He could not help but doubt Dongli Qingqing's words. Dongli Qingqing still nodded with certainty and said, "It's not an ordinary rock, it's a stone demon." As the two of them spoke, the little scarlet flame bull crow to the side had quieted down. It stared intently at Dongli Qingqing's side, curling its tongue and secretly nibbling at the spirit leaves on the black flame spirit ginseng in Dongli Qingqing's hand, saliva overflowing from its mouth. What is a stone demon? Du Xiaofu held the mountain peak rock in his palm, deep in thought. Could it be that this hard rock really had an extraordinary origin? Otherwise, how could his vain spirit be the same as it? At this moment, as he held the mountain peak rock in his palm, Du Xiaofu could faintly feel that there was an inexplicable connection between him and the hard rock in his hand. This feeling was extremely mysterious, so mysterious that it was indescribable and could only be understood. Everything in the world has a spirit. There are humans, beasts, and other spiritual races. However, among them, there is the most peculiar and powerful race, the Yao race. The demonic race, when gathered, takes shape; when scattered, it becomes nothing. The essence of the qi depends on the object, the qi is chaotic in the middle, the object changes outside, the form, the spirit, the qi, the quality, the use of the exterior and the interior. It originates from the 5 elements, and passes through the 5 elements. Dongli Qingqing paused for a moment before continuing to talk to Du Xiaofu. The demonic race, whether it is a ghost, or a god, or a demon, or a fox's charm, or a yin flame, or a divine light, or a strange grass, or a strange wood, all of them are psychic, not strange. As for the explanation, it may be that the cloud does not think, or it may be that the cloud is abnormal, but it is only because all living things in the world have spirits. The demon clan. Du Xiaofu murmured in disbelief. The demonic race can all grow to an extremely terrifying level. It is said that even the weakest demonic race can compare to the demonic beasts on the heavenly beast ranking. You do not know this now because your cultivation is not strong enough. In the future, when you become stronger and come into contact with more of the secrets of this world, you will know that this world is far more vast than we can imagine. Dongli Qingqing said to Du Xiaofu. Is this rock really a demonic stone? Du Xiaofu held the mountain rock in his hand and tossed it up and down. Suddenly, he threw it directly at the rock wall with great force. Ka. The mountain rock made cracking sounds as it hit the rock wall, and many pieces of rock fell down. The mountain rock also fell down, but there was still no reaction. It was no different from a normal rock, except for the bronze color that was slightly different from normal rocks. There doesn't seem to be any reaction. Du Xiaofu looked at Dongli Qingqing in confusion. Dongli Qingqing smiled faintly, then looked at the mountain rock and said, "This stone demon is extremely hard. Its material is already a true treasure of heaven and earth. Why don't you use it to refine a spiritual weapon? It is said that a psychic stone demon can at least refine a Dao weapon." You can't refine me at all. Don't threaten me." Just as Dongli Qingqing finished speaking, the mountain rock suddenly opened its mouth and spoke. Its voice was childish, then it rolled on the ground and kept shouting, "It hurts so much. It hurts so much." It spoke, "It really is a stone demon." Du Xiaofu was shocked. If he was not still sitting and unable to move, he would have taken 2 steps back in shock. Moo. The little scarlet rock, who was secretly eating the leaves of the black flame spirit ginseng, heard the sound. The stone that could talk immediately attracted its attention. It slightly raised its head, then its gaze fell on the rolling mountain rock. It immediately ran over and opened its mouth to bite the mountain rock. "You stupid calf, let go of me. Otherwise, I won't be polite," the mountain rock suddenly shouted with its childish voice. However, the little scarlet rock was not afraid of tigers. It simply ignored the mountain rock. It seemed to bite a few times in its mouth, and felt that it was incomparably hard and tasteless. It directly spat the mountain rock next to Du Xiaofu, then continued to run toward Dongli Qingqing, as if it still felt that the leaves of the black flame spirit ginseng were more delicious. "Little calf, I'm not done with you," the mountain rock angrily said, but its childish voice was extremely disharmonious with the tone of the atmosphere. "Little guy, you've eaten enough. I still have use for the rest." Dongli Qingqing seemed to have already discovered that the scarlet rock was secretly eating. When she saw the scarlet rock run over again, she could only put the black flame spirit ginseng back into her qianquan bag. Moo moo. When the scarlet rock saw this, it immediately looked at Dongli Qingqing with its big, pitiful eyes. It was as if it had been wronged, as if it could melt a person's heart. "Here, eat this." Dongli Qingqing could not bear it and took out a few spiritual herbs from her qianquan bag. Moo moo. When it felt the spiritual herb's energy fluctuations, the scarlet rock immediately rolled its tongue and directly sucked the spiritual herbs into its mouth. It was afraid that Dongli Qingqing would take them back, so it immediately ran to a corner of the rock and happily chewed on them. At this moment, Du Xiaofu also grabbed the rolling mountain peak rock in his hand. After recovering from his shock, he recalled that the black flame spirit ginseng that he had painstakingly obtained, an elixir that was not inferior to the golden middle plum, had actually been eaten by this stone demon. Immediately, anger rose in his heart as he said, "Stone demon, did you eat my black flame spirit ginseng? So what if I ate it?" On the mountain rock, there was a pair of faintly discernible eyes blinking on the mountain peak. At the bottom of the mountain, there was also a mouth that was moving. It looked extremely mysterious. Du Xiaofu was stunned. This stone demon was still so arrogant after eating his black flame spirit ginseng. How could Du Xiaofu tolerate this? It had always been him who stole other people's spiritual herbs. He did not expect that his own spiritual herb, especially the extraordinary black flame spirit ginseng, would actually be eaten by this stone. This was no different from being robbed. Du Xiaofu's expression immediately changed. "You think you're righteous? You stole my black flame spirit ginseng and you're still so arrogant? Spit it out for me." Du Xiaofu's temper flared as he continuously shook the stone in his hand. It was as if he hoped that this stone demon would really spit out the black flame spirit ginseng that it had stolen. "Shameless human, let me go," the mountain rock screamed. "Spit out the black flame spirit ginseng and I will let you go," Du Xiaofu hatefully said. If he did not spit out the black flame spirit ginseng, he would definitely not let this stone demon go. "I already ate it, how can I spit it out? Don't even think about it." The mountain rock raised its voice and said. "Humph." Du Xiaofu's eyes darkened as he hatefully snorted and said, "You don't want to spit it out? Then I will refine you into a spiritual tool. With your strength, you want to refine your grandpa sure? Dream on." The mountain rock seemed to be completely unafraid and was not threatened at all. It arrogantly said to Du Xiaofu, "What can you do to me? You can't touch me. You." Du Xiaofu angrily glared as he viciously threw the mountain rock in his hand. It directly slammed into the hard rock wall. Bang! The hard rock wall trembled as it directly shattered many rocks. "Shameless and despicable human, your grandpa sure is in so much pain." The mountain rock rolled on the ground as it loudly cried out in pain. It seemed to be angry as it loudly said, "At most, it will hurt a little. But you can't do anything to me. Let's see what you can do to me." Du Xiaofu was stunned. This stone demon was actually as stubborn as his big brother, Zhen Qingchen. That's right. As he thought of his big brother, Zhen Qingchun, the corners of Du Xiaofu's mouth curved into an evil smile. Then, a smile appeared in his eyes as he looked at the rolling mountain rock. His expression softened as he softly said, I wonder if a stone demon can be considered an evil creature. A boy's urine can suppress evil, but I wonder if a boy's urine can do the same. As his words fell, Du Xiaofu immediately turned towards the Scarlet Rock, who was chewing on an elixir beside the rock wall. Little guy, come here. Moo moo. The Scarlet Rock raised its head as if it understood Du Xiaofu's words. It immediately ran over. Little guy, be good. Go give that stone demon a bath. Du Xiaofu chuckled as he stroked the Scarlet Rock's little horn. Moo moo. The Scarlet Rock raised its head. Its eyes were bright as if it didn't understand. It just intimately rubbed against Du Xiaofu's body. Du Xiaofu patiently continued to say to the Scarlet Rock, Little guy, be good. Go give that stone demon a bath. Moo moo. The Scarlet Rock didn't really understand. It raised its head and looked at Du Xiaofu. Its eyes slightly blinked, and it was incomparably adorable. Then, it walked towards the stone demon that was rolling on the ground. Its eyes were filled with confusion and curiosity. Little calf, don't come over. Hurry up and go away. If you dare to come over, your grandpa's stone will definitely not let you go. The mountain demon was a little scared. It rolled on the ground, but its speed was not fast. Moo moo. Finally, perhaps because the little scarlet flame bull understood Du Xiaofu's words, it stood on top of the rolling rocks on the mountain peak. Then, a pool of baby bull urine poured down. Little calf, I'm not done with you. Shameless human, I'm not done with you. The stone demon rolled and jumped on the ground. However, it still couldn't escape the fate of being bathed in urine. For a moment, it screamed and cursed endlessly. Don't threaten me. Do you think I can't do anything to you? In the future, you'll be bathed in urine every day. If it really doesn't work, I'll put you in the latrine for a few days. Du Xiaofu smiled with satisfaction. It seemed that this method was equally effective against his big brother Zhen Qingchun and the stone demon. Chapter 175. To one side, Dongli Qingqing looked at Du Xiaofu, her glassy eyes rippling. She did not know what to say, a complicated look in her eyes. It was as if she had only just found out that this guy had such a side to him, completely different from the people she had interacted with. Moo! At this moment, a neigh sounded from outside the cave. It was the sound of the Scarlet Crow Flame Bulls. Moo moo. Scarlet Rock's eyes immediately brightened and it heard this, and then it dashed out of the cave. Have they returned? Du Xiaofu's expression changed slightly. Thinking of the terrifying strength of Yan Qi, a bitter smile appeared in his eyes. This time, he had almost died under Yan Qi's feet. Boom, the ground trembled slightly, and then 2 large and 1 small Scarlet Crow Flame Bulls walked into the cave. Du Xiaofu looked at the 2 large Scarlet Crow Flame Bulls. They were Yan Qi and Qi Yan, whom he had already met. However, Yan Qi had shrunk to his normal size at this moment, but he was still extremely large. His body was 20 feet long, and the height of the 2 youths was like a small mountain. With the arrival of Yan Qi and Qi Yan, 2 invisible and terrifying auras spread out. The aura on Yan Qi's body, in particular, seemed to be able to affect the surrounding natural energy for no reason. This aura was extremely terrifying. However, Du Xiaofu had faced many strong practitioners before, and the aura on the Lightning Lion's body was even stronger than Yan Qi's. Therefore, after a brief moment of discomfort, his expression quickly returned to normal. Ah! It hurts. The sound of the mountain rocks rolling once again rang out loudly from under Yan Qi's hooves, his tender voice sounding extremely miserable. This voice immediately caused Yan Qi to raise his cow hoof. He lowered his head and saw the mountain rocks rolling all over the ground. A doubtful expression surged within his gong-like eyes. He looked at the mountain rocks and his expression was quite surprised as he asked, "Is it a stone demon?" The mountain rocks rolled on the ground again, loudly saying, "Just now, that little calf bullied me. You old cow also bullied me. I will remember you. What's going on?" Yan Qi looked at Du Xiaofu and Dongli Qingqing in confusion. "It's fine. This stone demon is related to my friend," Dongli Qingqing said. Upon hearing this, Yan Qi no longer paid any attention to the rolling mountain rocks on the ground. Instead, he looked at Du Xiaofu, who had already woken up. His eyes were filled with shock as he said, "You have woken up? I did not expect your physical body to be so strong. It is likely comparable to the strongest demonic beasts. You almost stomped me into pieces." Du Xiaofu raised his head slightly to look at Embermane with a bitter expression. At this moment, he was truly unable to contend against a demonic beast expert at the Beast Lord realm. "I'm really sorry. If you had said earlier that you would use the blood of the golden-winged rock to exchange for the black flame spirit ginseng, this would not have happened. It almost caused a misunderstanding." Yan Qi seemed to be a little embarrassed. His voice was very simple and honest, unlike when he was furious. This, Du Xiaofu and Dongli Qingqing looked at each other and smiled bitterly, not knowing what to say. The two of them clearly knew that they had not planned to use the blood of the golden-winged rock to exchange for the black flame spirit ginseng. Du Xiaofu was also the clearest. When he discovered that the scarlet pheasant was blocking the exit of the cave, he had an idea and used his blood to exchange for the black flame spirit ginseng. If he told Yan Qi and the scarlet pheasant that their original intention was to snatch the black flame spirit ginseng, and that they only later found out that there were two scarlet black flame bulls and that Yan Qi was at the Beast Lord realm, then everything would have changed. Yan Qi looked at Du Xiaofu and continued, "You are not bad. You are not afraid of death for your companions. I have seen too many humans who are willing to betray their companions in order to survive." Du Xiaofu smiled faintly at Yan Qi and said, "Are you praising me?" Hearing this, Dongli Qingqing looked at Du Xiaofu beside her. Ripples appeared in her glassy eyes, but they quickly disappeared. Her eyes were still. "I am very curious. You are clearly a human, but why do your blood and aura belong to the golden-winged rock? Could it be that you were born from the union of a human and a rock? But this is almost impossible." Yan Qi's eyes were filled with doubt as he said softly, "The union of a human and a beast can be like this?" Du Xiaofu seemed to have discovered a new continent and was extremely surprised. Dongli Qingqing slightly lowered her eyes and a trace of green light flashed in her eyes. Then she said to Du Xiaofu, "When a beast clan expert reaches the Beast King realm, they can transform into a human form, no different from a human. In the boundless world, there will always be strange feelings between humans and beasts when they meet. When a beast clan expert reaches the Beast King realm, they can also transform into a human. There are many human and beast lovers. Although this kind of thing is extremely rare and is not tolerated by the Beast Clan, Human Clan, or Beast Clan, it does exist. However, every time such a person appears, they will be hunted down and killed by the various clans. This is too much. What does it have to do with other people when they are together? Why should they be hunted down?" Du Xiaofu was somewhat indignant. Dongli Qingqing continued, "If such a person has a descendant, they will also be hunted down by the various clans. However, if such a person is born from the union of a human and beast clan, or a human and beast clan, the descendant may be extremely weak and may easily die. However, there is another situation where the descendant is incomparably powerful from birth with terrifying talent. Once they grow up, they will be an existence that shakes the world. Will they be that strong?" Du Xiaofu was quite surprised. "Of course, they will be very strong. However, it is very unlikely for such an existence to grow up. After all, the union of a human and beast clan is limited by the rules of the world. It is very difficult for them to have descendants. Even if there is, they will be rejected and suppressed by the rules of the world. Almost all of them will die prematurely. Even if they have a lot of heavenly treasures, it will be difficult for them to survive. Yan Qi said to Du Xiaofu. Then, he looked at Dongli Qingqing with a puzzled expression and said, "The aura on your body is very strange. You don't seem to be an ordinary human." "Yes, my family has some background," Dongli Qingqing said with a smile. "Moo moo." The scarlet pheasant let out a slight cry. It looked at Du Xiaofu and Dongli Qingqing with an extremely gentle gaze. It seemed to be saying something. Scarlet Rock's mother said that you are fine. You are injured, so you should recuperate here. We are leaving. Yan Qi's gaze finally fell on Du Xiaofu and said, "Scarlet Rock owes you a favor, so I named her Scarlet Rock. I owe you a favor. I hope that if there is a chance in the future, I will repay you." You are leaving. Where are you going? Du Xiaofu asked with a puzzled expression. This dark forest is not the territory of the Beast clan. We do not belong here. We only came here because of the black flame spirit ginseng. Now that we have found all the herbs needed to build a foundation for Scarlet Rock, it is time to go back and build a foundation for Scarlet Rock. We will meet again in the future. After Yan Qi finished speaking, he nodded to the scarlet pheasant and left with the little Scarlet Rock. Moo moo. The little Scarlet Rock seemed to know that it was about to leave. It looked back at Du Xiaofu from time to time, reluctant to part with him. However, when it passed by the mountain's rock, it kicked the mountain's rock back to the cliff. "Little calf, I am not finished with you." The young voice of the rock continued to shout. "We will meet again if fate allows, little guy." When Du Xiaofu saw the reluctance in little Scarlet Pang's eyes, he felt a little reluctant in his heart. With a gentle wave of his hand, he watched as the 3 scarlet crow flaming bulls, 2 big and 1 small, disappeared from the cave. "Your injuries are very serious. You should first meditate and recover." After a moment, Dongli Qingqing said to Du Xiaofu, "We must recover as soon as possible." "Okay." Du Xiaofu collected his thoughts and nodded. He looked at the mountain's rock not far away and struggled to stand up and walk over. He did not care about the smell of the bull's urine and directly used a separate Qiankuan bag to cover the struggling mountain's rock. "Shameless human, what do you want to do?" Before he finished speaking, Du Xiaofu had already put the mountain's rock into the Qiankuan bag. "This stone demon seems to be extraordinary. You should study it carefully. Maybe you will find something," Dongli Qingqing said to Du Xiaofu. "Okay, let's meditate and meditate first." Du Xiaofu nodded slightly and said. Then, he sat cross-legged. After stuffing a lot of elixirs into his mouth, he condensed a cultivation handprint and began to adjust his breathing. After a while, a faint golden light began to fluctuate around his body and began to cover his whole body. Dongli Qingqing sat cross-legged. Her glassy eyes quietly looked at the purple-robed youth's figure that was shrouded in a faint golden light. Her eyes rippled with complicated emotions as she murmured, "Why do you want me to owe you, Qi Qi?" After a moment, Dongli Qingqing's expression became restrained. She was like a fairy, but her temperament was refined and arrogant, otherworldly and lonely. Her delicate hands formed a hand seal and a green light spread out, enveloping the cave within 100 meters. As the two of them breathed and adjusted their breathing, the cave suddenly became silent and silent. Time slowly passed by as the two of them adjusted their breathing. The faint golden light around Du Xiaofu's body became denser and denser. He had cultivated the cultivation method of the golden-winged great peng. In addition to his powerful body, he had already reached the level of bone refining and marrow cleansing. Although his injuries were severe, they were still in the process of recovery. However, this time, Du Xiaofu's injuries were not light. It was likely that he would not be able to recover in a short period of time. If it were any other ordinary pulse realm or profound realm cultivator in his place, even 10 times would not be enough to kill him. While the two of them meditated, the silence lasted for more than a dozen hours. Then, the green light around Dongli Qingqing's body suddenly vanished. Her eyelashes trembled slightly, and then she opened her eyes. Qi. After a faint green light flashed in her eyes, Dongli Qingqing silently stood up. She looked at Du Xiaofu, who was meditating and recovering from his injuries. Then, she silently flew out of the cave. Brothers, it's time to update. Originally, it was supposed to be updated at 12, but for some reason, the Fresh Flower leaderboard hasn't refreshed yet. I've been waiting, but it still hasn't refreshed yet. So, I decided to release it first. I'm afraid that if I don't release it soon, brothers will come after me. The system's Fresh Flower leaderboard hasn't refreshed yet, so brothers, please don't throw in any fresh flowers for now. After you throw in fresh flowers, it will be reset to 0. After it refreshes, everyone can throw in more. Little you, continue to work hard at writing. Chapter 176. It was early in the morning outside the cave. Stone peaks were clustered together, dark red like iron, solemn and dignified. Mist drifted within the mountain range. The surrounding exposed rock walls and precipitous rocks were all covered in a continuous scarlet-black color, appearing extremely quiet and secluded. However, many places were in a mess, proving that an extremely intense battle had occurred here not long ago. On a mountain peak, a slightly hunched figure stood silently. His long hair was combed into a high bun, with some white mottled hair. From the back, this person was probably quite old. Qi. A beautiful figure flew out of the cave. Her entire body was wrapped in a green light. After that, she landed on a nearby mountain peak. The light receded, revealing the beautiful figure, her face still pale. It was Dongli Qingqing. Master. Dongli Qingqing's beautiful figure moved lightly, arriving behind the slightly hunched figure with mottled white hair. How are your injuries? A rather sharp voice rang out, causing one to feel uncomfortable. The figure slowly turned around. It was an old woman in her 50s, her face looking a little old. If Du Xiaofu were here, he would definitely recognize this old woman as the one he had seen in the Savage Beast mountain range. She was also Dongli Qingqing's master, and had even fought with the beautiful woman who had come to find Fui Bai. My injuries are roughly the same. Could it be that master has been here for a long time? Dongli Qingqing looked at her master, her eyes filled with doubt. Her entire being emitted a faint spiritual energy, like a spirit from the depths of the forest. You've been here for a few days. Come with me, it's time to go back. The old woman looked at Dongli Qingqing and said. Master, I. Hearing this, Dongli Qingqing secretly looked towards the cave below. The old woman seemed to know everything. Looking at Dongli Qingqing, she asked, could it be that you can't let go of that brat? Dongli Qingqing was a little afraid to meet her master's gaze. Opening her pearly white teeth, she said, Master, he saved me before. Right now, his injuries are quite serious. You also saved him before. You don't owe that brat anything, said the old woman. Her expression and aura made it hard for others to resist. Dongli Qingqing raised her head slightly and said, Master, I saved him because it was convenient. He saved me twice because he knew that his life was in danger, so this is different. So, you gave your clan's carefree rippling steps to that brat and wanted to give him a black flame spirit ginseng. The old woman seemed to know everything. On the towering mountain peak, there were a few strands of milky white mist. In the mist, on Dongli Qingqing's fairy-like face, there was a flash of light in her glassy eyes. It was hard to fathom. Then her eyes moved slightly, and her thin lips curled up slightly. She said to the old woman, Master, I didn't want to owe him, but I didn't expect that I would owe him again. This is not the reason why I asked you to come to the dark forest. As the old woman's voice faded, it caused the surrounding space to tremble. Her expression became a little more severe as she said, I shouldn't have let you come here. This is my mistake. Now, come back with me. Master. Dongli Qingqing seemed to want to say something. The old woman interrupted Dongli Qingqing's words. Her gaze was tightly fixed on Dongli Qingqing as she asked, Her, could it be that you have taken a liking to that brat? Hearing this, Dongli Qingqing's heart trembled. She lowered her eyes and a trace of light flashed in her eyes. Then, she said, disciple doesn't. That's for the best. The old woman looked at Dongli Qingqing. Her fierce gaze swept across her as she said, you should know what kind of responsibility you bear. Come back with me. Don't tell me you want me to kill that brat. Master, don't. Dongli Qingqing's heart trembled. She naturally knew her master's temper. Swoosh swoosh. Below the mountain peak, a dozen figures flashed. After a few flashes, they appeared in a messy pile of rocks. These dozen people were all dressed in black. Their auras were not weak, and at least 4 of them were at the pulse spirit stage. Protector Min, it's the cave in front. When I unintentionally passed by this place 4 months ago, I felt the aura of a spiritual medicine inside. It should not be an ordinary spiritual medicine. However, the roars of demonic beasts were emitted, and the aura was very strong. Therefore, I did not dare to enter. A skinny large man said to a black-robed old man in front of him. There were some people fighting here not long ago. Could it be that they were fighting over a spiritual medicine? Let's quickly go in and take a look. The black-robed old man scanned his surroundings. He gently waved his hand, indicating for everyone to enter the cave to investigate. Immediately, a dozen figures carefully rushed into the cave. Bang bang bang. Suddenly, just as these dozen or so people entered the cave, a stream of energy suddenly fell from the sky. Like a thunderbolt, it exploded with a loud bang, and a low-energy sonic boom resounded through the cave. Rumble rumble rumble. The earth shook and the mountains swayed. Violent ripples of energy swept out like a storm. It seemed to be mixed with some kind of terrifying energy. The dozen people did not even have the chance to let out a miserable cry before their life force was instantly destroyed. They did not even know how they died. Now, we don't owe him anything. Follow me. As the old woman's voice faded, her figure immediately rushed into the air. There's no time to say goodbye. You have to be well. A helpless expression appeared on Dongli Qingqing's pretty face. After which, she looked at the cave below the mountain peak. A strand of black hair by her ear faintly moved. Her white hand gently lifted, and her figure was wrapped by a suction force as she rushed into the air. Finally, she disappeared into thin air. Swoosh! A figure hurriedly rushed out from within the cave. Looking at the sky, he seemed to faintly see a beautiful green figure disappear in the air. Following which, his gaze landed on the dozen corpses on the ground. Black Fiend's Sect. The dozen corpses all had the symbol of the Black Fiend's Sect. Du Xiaofu's still pale face immediately turned serious. Originally, he had thought that there were no longer any members of the Black Fiend's Sect in the vicinity after leaving the mountain range. However, from the looks of it, there were still members of the Black Fiend's Sect in the vicinity. Du Xiaofu was originally adjusting his breathing when he suddenly heard the astonishing tremors outside. He withdrew his hand seal and stopped his breathing. Not seeing Dongli Qingqing's figure beside him, he quickly ran out. He did not expect to see the dozen corpses of the Black Fiend's Sect outside the cave. The figure in the air should also be Dongli Qingqing. She should be the one who killed them. Is she leaving? That's right, she will eventually leave. However, I don't know if we will have the chance to meet again in the future. Du Xiaofu raised his head and looked at the sky. The gaze in his eyes was a little absent-minded. After which, he lowered his eyes. A long while later, he withdrew his mind and softly muttered, the Black Fiend's Sect is really everywhere. Looks like I can't stay here any longer. At dusk, the sun set in the west, enveloping the dark forest. As night fell, it was as if the world had suddenly fallen into darkness. The bright moon hung in the sky, hovering in despair at the edge of the dark forest. In the mountain range, the night wind blew slightly. The continuous stretch of towering trees rose and fell slightly. The treetops swayed slightly, casting long and unpredictable shadows in the mountain forest like ghosts. Roar! In the silent night, in the vast forest, the cries of fierce birds and beasts would occasionally come from the depths. In a secluded valley, the night fog lingered. Between the cliffs, there was a cave that was difficult to discover. Inside the cave, there was a faint golden light that pervaded the air. A faintly discernible tyrannical aura spread out in an extremely swift and fierce manner, causing the surrounding fierce birds and beasts to flee far away. Inside the cave, a rather dazzling golden light accompanied by the flickering of the runes fluctuated. This invisible energy was like a materialized sound wave. In the end, it collided with the hard stone walls of the cave, causing the surrounding stone walls to tremble slightly. It was very tyrannical and fierce. After a long time, the faint golden light turned into strands of energy and withdrew. When the last strand of energy was completely withdrawn, a purple-robed figure appeared. A purple-robed youth sat cross-legged. On his curved and handsome face, he looked a little more resolute and determined than his peers. On his slightly closed eyes, his thick eyebrows were like swords. Huff! Du Xiaofu spat out a long mouthful of turbid air from his body. His tightly shut eyes slightly opened. There seemed to be a faint golden light flashing like lightning in his eyes. In the end, it quickly disappeared, and the gaze in his eyes became brighter and deeper. Finally, I'm fine. Feeling the injuries in his body, Du Xiaofu's still somewhat pale face could not help but reveal a trace of a smile. After recuperating for 3 whole days, and with the help of several elixirs, his injuries had finally recovered to about 60 to 70%. He could be considered to be fine. Du Xiaofu's pitch-black eyes blinked as a faint golden light flickered within them. He pondered for a moment and softly muttered, I wonder if Xingyu and that tomboy have arrived at Tianwu Academy. I hope that nothing happened to them. Thinking about everything that had happened recently, his eyes gradually narrowed. Dai Xingyu, the little tiger, and Ouyang Shuang's whereabouts were unknown. He was currently being chased by the Black Fiend sect and had to hide everywhere. In the end, it was because he was not strong enough. If he was strong enough, he would not have ended up like this. Black Fiend sect. Slightly opening his mouth, Du Xiaofu's voice was cold. A sharp glint flashed across his pitch-black eyes before he softly muttered, before I leave, I should properly comprehend some methods. As a soul symbol master, I cannot lag behind. Chi la la. A moment later, in the valley below the cliff, Du Xiaofu's hand seals changed. With a wave of his hand, a faint golden light flashed across his palm. Following which, mysterious talisman runes flew out from his back. As Du Xiaofu's hand seals changed, a faint golden light flickered. The mysterious talisman runes seemed to be constantly rearranging and changing behind his back. Amidst the myriad of changes, the aura was tyrannical and sharp. Chapter 177. The night was as cold as water. In the dark forest, the continuous sea of trees and mountains leaned against each other, like a monstrous dark beast sleeping peacefully under the hazy moonlight. The tall swaying treetops were like umbrellas, clouds, and cotton, like a splash ink painting in the dark night. It's impossible for them to disappear without a trace. Search for them, we must find that treasure. And that king-scaled demonic tiger, it's impossible for them to escape from the dark forest. On top of a mountain in the dense forest, a black-clothed old man who was over 50 years old had a gloomy look in his eyes. Elder Qi, the head of the sect, sent a message saying that we must find the treasure as soon as possible. The Mu clan fort and other forces have also recently intervened. Not long ago, the young head of the sect suffered a loss at the hands of the people from the Mu clan fort and lost many disciples, a man in a black shirt said respectfully to the old man in black who was in his 50s. Reply to the leader, the treasure should be in the hands of the king-scaled demonic tiger and the others. As long as we find the king-scaled demonic tiger, we should be able to find those people. The old man in black looked gloomy and his eyes flashed with murderous intent. He said, according to my observation, it should be a few brats, and there seems to be a woman. Tell our information network to pay attention to the movements in the dark forest. Elder Chi, the young sect master is not far ahead. Should we go to the young sect master? The big man hesitated for a moment and then asked the old man. Tell the young leader that we'll look for the treasure first and ask him to be careful. The old man in black shook his head. A moment later, dozens of figures quickly darted into the dark forest and disappeared. The first rays of the morning sun shone. In an instant, above the firmament, thousands of golden rays pierced through the clouds and dyed the vast and boundless sea of trees with a layer of rouge. The light shone obliquely on the cliffs and the clouds were dyed red, then slowly faded. In the canyon, Du Xiaofu's hand seals changed one by one. As the seals changed, runes flowed and shone. Whoosh, suddenly, the talisman runes began to form on his back. With a flicker of light, they formed a pair of golden talisman wings on his back. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly swept out from Du Xiaofu's body. The rune wings on his back flapped, and he immediately floated into the air. His wings flapped, and light flowed. Like a giant peng spreading its wings, he soared through the 9 heavens. Peng descends to the 9 heavens. Du Xiaofu let out a loud shout. His voice was like a sudden clap of thunder that resounded through the canyon. The wings on his back flapped in a daze, and the airflow whizzed out with a terrifying momentum. This was not a real golden-winged rock, but when it flapped its wings, it was as if a real golden-winged rock had descended. The wings were only condensed from talisman runes, but it was as if a real golden-winged rock was floating in the air, carrying the domineering will of the golden-winged rock race. Roar, a terrifying aura swept out. At this moment, in the distance of the surrounding mountains, the ferocious birds and beasts seemed to have sensed such a terrifying aura. They screeched and roared, and their bodies prostrated themselves. Early in the morning, the sun had just risen above the mountains, and was covered by the bright red clouds. The sunlight shone through the gaps in the clouds, like countless giant dragons spitting out golden waterfalls. On the towering peaks of the clouds, the cliffs were instantly lit up. In the blink of an eye, the clouds in the mountain forest dispersed, and the mountains were covered in verdant green. Many ancient buildings with exquisite carvings were hidden, and no one knew how many years they had existed, as if they had existed for eternity. In this vast space, no one knew where it existed in this world. The mountains here were connected, and all of them were towering into the clouds. The mountain range was continuous, and the trees on the mountains were luxuriant. The cliffs were steep, and the rivers were surging. A lone peak stood tall. The mountain was covered in lush shade and the vast blue sky in the early morning. A few wisps of morning clouds just happened to form an elegant and lively landscape painting. On the peak of the mountain, a beautiful figure stood. Her green dress fluttered in the wind, and her ink-black hair reflected the bright and beautiful luster of the sun. Her delicate face revealed an otherworldly beauty, and she was only 16 or 17 years old. The beautiful figure of the young girl stood there, and on her otherworldly face, her ethereal eyes flickered like stars. She looked at a certain place in the sky, and seemed to be in a daze for a long time. Then, the corner of her mouth slightly moved, and she murmured softly, "Brother from afar, do you know that there is still a younger sister like me? One day, I will leave this place to find you and father. Wait for me." As her voice fell, the beautiful figure leaped out, and slowly descended from the peak, like a fairy descending to the mortal world. Her green dress fluttered in the wind, and her long ink-black hair poured down in torrents behind her head. She was as otherworldly as a fairy, and also extraordinary and proud of the world. Pooh! A terrifying and overbearing aura swept out, and golden rays of light erupted. The runic wings behind Du Xiaofu's back were like a real peng descending to the world. The wings flapped, and his body flew in the air, and the vibrating airflow whistled. But for some unknown reason, Du Xiaofu suddenly sneezed, and then the runic symbols behind him scattered, and the terrifying aura directly became chaotic. Bang! Then, the pitiful Du Xiaofu was like a bird with broken wings, and directly fell from the sky. He fell face first, and his nose was bruised and his face was swollen, and his whole body was in pain. "Who is talking about me?" Du Xiaofu climbed up in a sorry state. If it wasn't for that sneeze that disturbed his mind, he definitely wouldn't have fallen. However, Du Xiaofu was clear in his heart that it was because he didn't thoroughly comprehend it, and it was far from enough. Fortunately, he was only cultivating, and if he was fighting with his opponent, then he would be in big trouble. "Continue to comprehend." Peng descends to the 9th heaven. Du Xiaofu murmured softly, and patted the dust off his body. His hand seals condensed, and the runic symbols flashed, and then he continued to comprehend. At this moment, Du Xiaofu was also comprehending one of the techniques of the golden-winged great rocks. The rock descends to the 9 heavens. This was originally one of the golden-winged great rock's beast abilities, and it was also an extremely terrifying attack technique. From the cultivation technique of the golden-winged Great Peng clan, Du Xiaofu knew that when a real golden-winged Great Peng clan expert used Peng descends to the 9 heavens, the Great Peng would spread its wings, and its true form would appear, soaring through the 9 heavens, and traversing the firmament. Its pressure was enough to crush and destroy everything. However, at this moment, Du Xiaofu had comprehended it, and at present, he didn't have any extravagant hopes of reaching that level. He just felt that he hadn't reached the pulse spirit realm, and was unable to fly. His enemy, the Black Kill sect, was hiding everywhere, and only wanted to comprehend some of the shallow mysteries of Peng descends to the 9 heavens so that they could borrow the momentum to fly. If he wanted to comprehend and use the complete Peng descends to the 9 heavens, it was definitely impossible for him to do so now. As he immersed himself in comprehending, Du Xiaofu also entered a state of comprehension. For a moment, he seemed to have forgotten that he was still in the dark forest, and that he still had to go to Tianwu Academy. Just like that, several days passed. Within the cave, Du Xiaofu's body was enveloped in a mysterious white light. The white light was like a divine light, and a powerful aura filled the cave. Under the white divine light, one could see that Du Xiaofu's face was no longer pale. Instead, there was a faint redness, and it seemed that the injuries in his body had all healed. Furthermore, his aura had also returned to its original state. If one were to carefully sense it, they would be able to sense that this aura seemed to have faintly strengthened. Hula, after an unknown period of time, a strange energy fluctuation suddenly surged within the cave. Not long after the fluctuation spread out, a powerful aura suddenly surged out from Du Xiaofu's body, whose eyes were tightly shut. Boom! This aura continued to rise. In an extremely short period of time, it broke through an invisible bottleneck, and the aura climbed to a new height. At this moment, the white divine light around Du Xiaofu's body emitted a faint rune light as his aura continued to rise. The pressure became increasingly powerful, and the divine light fluctuation appeared extremely mystical. When his aura completely stabilized, the white divine light around Du Xiaofu gradually disappeared. His tightly shut eyes slowly opened, and a bright light flickered in his eyes. In the end, it quickly disappeared, causing his gaze to become even brighter and deeper. Huff! A long turbid breath was spat out from his abdomen, and Du Xiaofu's face involuntarily revealed a trace of a smile. He could feel that the mental energy in his Naiwan palace was several times stronger than before, and had already broken through to the mysterious level of a 3-star soul symbol master. All of this was because of the incomplete mysterious secret art that was contained within the beast bone. Recently, Du Xiaofu did not spend too much time on the cultivation of his mental energy. However, his progress was not small. Especially after cultivating the incomplete mysterious secret art, Du Xiaofu felt as if his mental energy had skyrocketed. These few days, when he was comprehending Rock descends to the 9th heaven, he had also seriously cultivated his mental energy. In addition to his previous accumulations, he did not expect that he would make another breakthrough. If it was not for the incomplete mysterious secret art, Du Xiaofu estimated that it would take at least half a year for him to break through to the mysterious level of a 3-star soul symbol master. In these few days, his injuries had also completely recovered. Night, the moonlight was like a waterfall. When the first rays of the morning sun arrived, the dark forest once again burst forth with life. Whoosh! On a cliff, a purple-robed figure climbed up like an ape, and then appeared on a wide boulder. Huff, this was a purple-robed youth. His eyes slightly narrowed, and his gaze swept across the clouds that had yet to dissipate in the early morning sky. He took a deep breath of fresh air, and then his hands formed a seal. A pair of pale golden rune light condensed into a pair of wings that fluttered out. He flapped his wings, and along with a domineering and fierce aura, he swept across the sky like a giant rock. In the dense forest, Du Xiaofu's figure quickly swept out. The profound energy under his feet surged, and he activated the wave-treading carefree steps. With every step he took, it was as if the ground beneath his feet had shrunk into an inch, and his figure appeared in front of him. Some ferocious birds and ferocious beasts felt an invisible aura, and would flee from afar. Chi! Suddenly, Du Xiaofu stopped in his tracks. Looking ahead, his pupils slightly shrank, as if he had discovered something. Little you, please continue to write in the flowers. Chapter 178. Whoosh! At the same time, celestial qi gushed out from beneath his feet. Du Xiaofu's figure instantly leapt onto a towering tree beside him, his gaze peering down through the gaps in the dense foliage. Ka! Just then, he saw dozens of people walking over slowly from the front. Their auras were restrained, and their footsteps were extremely light. Big brother, why have the Black Fiends sect, Mu Clan Fort, and the other forces all come to this borderland recently? Could it be that some treasure has appeared here? The Black Fiends sect, Mu Clan Fort, and those people are all here. Naturally, they won't be simple. If we encounter them, we'd better avoid them. But the bounty that the Black Fiends sect has put up is not low. If we can find those brats and the king-scaled demonic tiger, we can get a set of noble-grade martial arts techniques. As long as we provide clues, we can get a spirit-grade medicinal pill. This price is really attractive. It's said that many people have joined the search party for those brats and the king-scaled demonic tiger. Kuan-zi, have you lost your mind because of too many women? The Black Fiends sect is offering a huge bounty for the king-scaled demonic tiger. Even if we find it, I'm afraid we won't be alive to receive the bounty. Besides, no one knows what those brats look like, so there's no way to find them. Heh, boss, I'm just saying. If the Black Fiends sect can't find them, how could we encounter them? But if we can get the spirit-grade medicinal pill and noble-grade martial arts techniques, we'll be rich. I wonder who offended the Black Fiends sect. Now that they're being hunted by them, I'm afraid it's not a good feeling. Anyway, it's fine as long as it's not us who offended the Black Fiends sect. Dark Forest Town is not far ahead. Once we reach the town, we'll sell off our gains this time. Then, we can rest for a while. I think you want to go find some women. You haven't touched a woman for 2 months. You can't hold it in anymore. The group of people laughed and cursed in low voices, then disappeared from Du Xiaofu's sight. Chi! As the group of people completely disappeared from sight, Du Xiaofu's figure gently landed on the ground from the towering tree. His expression was slightly gloomy. His eyes narrowed slightly on his resolute and determined face as he softly muttered, I didn't expect the Black Fiends sect to actually start issuing a bounty. This means that at the very least, Little Tiger and the tomboy have not fallen into their hands. After pondering for a moment, Du Xiaofu touched the faint and almost undetectable mark of the Black Fiend's soul tracking seal on his neck. The Black Fiend's soul tracking seal was still sealed, which meant that the people from the Black Fiends sect did not know who he was. Although Shui Yunming from the Black Fiends sect had seen him and even exchanged blows with him, he did not know that he was related to the little green bird they were looking for. It was likely that he would not be too anxious to find trouble with him unless he accidentally bumped into him. Black Fiends sect, since you've angered me, then I'll play with you. If you want to catch me, then we'll have to see if you have the ability. Du Xiaofu softly muttered, a somewhat awe-inspiring expression surfaced on his resolute face. In the deep and boundless forest, a dozen figures appeared on a hillside with a slightly wider line of sight. They were all dressed in black, and although the cultivation aura on their bodies was not too strong, their aura was extremely fierce and bloody. From this fierce and bloody aura, it was not difficult to determine that these people had lived a life of slaughter. If they were to encounter those rookies of the same cultivation level outside, it was likely that they would be able to fight against 10 of them. Boss, so much time has passed, but the king-scaled demonic tiger and those little ghosts have yet to appear. The guardian elders are also unable to sense the aura of the black fiend's soul-tracking seal. I'm afraid that the king-scaled demonic tiger and those little ghosts have already left the dark forest. A skinny youth with a rather sharp mouth and monkey cheeks said. He respectfully said to a middle-aged man in front of him. Impossible. The elders said that the black fiend's soul-tracking seal should have been tampered with. Although they are unable to sense the specific traces of the black fiend's soul-tracking seal, they are able to sense the fluctuations of the black fiend's soul-tracking seal in the vicinity. It has not left this large area. As long as the experts of the sect come, they will have a way to lock onto the specific traces of the black fiend's soul-tracking seal. When that time comes, those bastards are doomed to die. The middle-aged man's gaze was fierce. He looked at the large hilltop within his line of sight and said, all of you, be 120% alert. You must find them. The sect master has ordered that whoever finds the treasure will be heavily rewarded. Chi. Just as the middle-aged man's voice fell, an unforeseen event suddenly occurred in the forest behind him. A figure silently shot out, and a pale golden light swept out. Then, before the two black-clothed men could even make a sound, a bloody hole appeared at the back of their heads. Bang bang. The two black-clothed men fell to the ground and became two corpses. The pale golden light behind them suddenly exploded, and a domineering and fierce aura swept out. Low muffled sounds of energy rang out, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking. Then, one after another, the corpses directly fell down, without the slightest ability to resist. Quickly retreat, the leading man shouted. However, before he could finish his shout, the two Pulsation Realm and Perfection Realm cultivators beside him, who had retreated in a panic, did not even have the chance to activate their pulsation spirits before they directly became corpses. 12 people had actually become corpses in less than 3 breaths of time. All of this was unbelievably fast. It was unbelievable. Then, the golden light fluctuated, and a purple-robed youth appeared in the middle-aged man's line of sight. His face was cold, and his gaze was sharp and frightening. You are the brat we are looking for. The middle-aged man seemed to be extremely astute. He immediately guessed the purple-robed youth's identity. The aura of an early Pulsation Realm cultivator exploded. At the same time, he tightly gripped the saber in his hand. His speed was extremely fast, and with a few saber shadows, he immediately slashed in front of Du Xiaofu. Swoosh swoosh. The sharp saber light, accompanied by a baleful aura, immediately enveloped the purple-robed youth viciously. However, the moment the saber light descended, an unbelievable scene appeared in the middle-aged man's eyes. The purple-robed youth was actually enveloped by the sharp saber light and disappeared at an almost impossible speed. Crack crack, as the saber light descended, the sharp saber light's baleful aura directly split a towering tree in front of him in half. However, it did not collapse, and a crack in the ground that was created by the saber light also spread far into the distance. Chi. At the same time that the saber light slashed through the air, a purple-robed youth almost came face to face with the middle-aged man. A faint golden light flickered, and a fist print in his hand ruthlessly swept over. How can he be so fast? The middle-aged man's eyes were filled with shock, and his pupils shrank. After all, he was an early Pulsation Realm cultivator. As his figure rapidly retreated, a palm print rapidly met the attack. Bang! With a low muffled sound, energy exploded. The middle-aged man's palm seemed to have been struck by lightning, and the bones in his palm were about to break. Dang dang. Under the impact of the huge force, the middle-aged man's body staggered and was sent flying, crashing into a large tree behind him. The tree, which was so large that two people would not be able to wrap their arms around it, was broken by the huge force and immediately collapsed with a rumble. However, it was immediately pulled back by the towering tree behind it, so it did not completely fall. Poochie. The middle-aged man spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. He muttered, "How is this possible? The pulsation realm is mysterious. How can it be so strong?" In just an instant of shock, the middle-aged man condensed a handprint in his hand and connected to his martial vein. As the runes spread, the phantom of a lizard demon beast that was dozens of feet long rushed out, wanting to suppress his opponent with its vein spirit. The difference between the pulsation realm and the pulsation realm's vein spirit was substantial, and it was insurmountable. Just as the lizard phantom was formed, the purple-robed youth's figure appeared in front of it. He did not care about the lizard phantom's vein spirit at all. With a wave of his hand, the golden runes spread, and a pressure was released, enveloping the lizard phantom, causing fear to appear in its eyes. Destroy. A faint voice came from the purple-robed youth's mouth. With a wave of his hand, the lizard phantom's vein spirit shattered like a giant rock. It was unstoppable. Not good. With his vein spirit destroyed, the middle-aged man spat out a mouthful of blood again. It was as if he had seen a ghost. His eyes were filled with shock, and his body suddenly leaped up into the air, wanting to escape. Generally speaking, no matter how strong or abnormal a pulsation realm cultivator was, it was unlikely that they could kill a pulsation realm cultivator. This was because a pulsation realm cultivator could already float in the air, and a pulsation realm cultivator could not do so. With this advantage, a pulsation realm cultivator could not kill a pulsation realm cultivator. At least if a pulsation realm cultivator wanted to escape, a pulsation realm cultivator would not be able to catch up. It's too late to escape. A cold and indifferent voice sounded out almost as the middle-aged man rose into the air. The purple-robed youth leaped out like a giant rock soaring into the air. He directly grabbed the middle-aged man's left leg and dragged him down. The middle-aged man tried to break free with all his strength, but at this moment, he was powerless. He was unable to break free from the purple-robed youth's restraints. Then, the purple-robed youth grabbed him by the ankle like a snake and fiercely threw him headfirst onto the ground. Bang! Such a heavy fall caused the ground to tremble and the mountains to shake. Cracks spread out, and the middle-aged man did not even have the chance to scream before he turned into a pile of meat paste. Everything in the surroundings calmed down, and the coldness on the purple-robed youth's face faded a little. After looting a few qiankun bags, he picked up a tree branch and dipped it in the blood on the ground. After leaving a few bloody words on a large tree, his figure entered the depths of the forest and disappeared. A day later, in a canyon, the corpses of 15 Black Fiend sect disciples were scattered everywhere. A pulsation realm mysterious level cultivator had also become a corpse. In the canyon, a purple-robed youth dipped a rock in blood. After leaving a few bloody words on the rock, his figure entered the dense sea of trees and disappeared. At dusk, deep in the mountains not far away, the corpses of 8 Black Fiend sect disciples were dripping with blood. A few bloody words were left on the scene. There's more today. Continue to ask for fresh flowers. Little you, continue to fight. Chapter 179. At dusk, deep in the mountains not far away, the corpses of 8 Black Fiend sect disciples were drenched in blood. There were also a few words written in blood at the scene. The next morning, in a forest hundreds of miles away, there were also words written in blood beside the corpses of 26 Black Fiend sect disciples. 3 days later, in the dense forest hundreds of miles away, there were 5 words written in blood on a big tree beside the corpses of 26 Black Fiend sect disciples. The words read, "Vow to destroy the Black Fiend sect." In the past few days, the news had spread around the dark forest. Within a few days, more than 100 Black Fiend sect disciples had been killed, including many Pulse spiritual realm cultivators. Although these hundreds of people were the absolute elites among the Black Fiend sect disciples, or else they would not have been sent out to search for treasures, these hundreds of people were undoubtedly a drop in the ocean for the entire Black Fiend sect. However, there was no doubt that someone had declared war on the Black Fiend sect. It was not difficult for the crowd to guess that the people who had recently been hunted down by the Black Fiend sect had started to take revenge. This kind of revenge was chilling even for those who had been in the dark forest. As long as the Black Fiend sect disciples were caught by the mysterious people, none of them could escape. They were all killed. In the dense forest, hundreds of Black Fiend sect disciples stood. Everyone looked at the 26 corpses on the ground, their eyes twitching. Naturally, none of the Black Fiend sect disciples present were merciful people. However, at this moment, seeing the bloody corpses of their own people lying in front of them, the impact was naturally different. They were especially worried that they wouldn't know if it would be their turn to be the next one to die. All the Black Fiend sect disciples knew that this was definitely the revenge of the people who had been hunted down. Once they encountered them, they would naturally not be merciful. In front of the hundreds of Black Fiend sect disciples, there was a young man in a black shirt. His gaze was extremely gloomy as he looked at the corpses on the ground. He said in a deep voice, "This method seems to be somewhat familiar." "It is very familiar. It seems to be the method of the purple-robed young man," a one-armed middle-aged man said. This person was the Pulse spiritual realm cultivator from the Black Fiend sect who had one of his arms torn off by Du Xiaofu during the battle with the Mu fort not long ago. A black-clothed old man in his 50s looked at the corpses around him. His complexion was ashen and extremely unsightly. A sharp killing intent flickered in his eyes as he said loudly, "No matter who it is, my Black Fiend sect will tear him to pieces to vent the hatred in my heart." As soon as he finished speaking, the old man in black looked at the young man in black with some respect and said, "Young master, I wonder when the district elder will return. With the district elder's methods, he will be able to find those people through the Black Fiend's soul tracking seal." A cold glint flashed across the black-clothed young man's eyes as he said, "We should be able to arrive today. We must find the treasure before the others. If it lands in the hands of the other factions, all our previous efforts will be wasted." The black-clothed old man said sternly, "Don't worry, young sect master. As long as the district elder is here, those fellows will definitely die. They won't be able to hide anymore." The scorching sun hung high in the sky of the dark forest, as if it wanted to roast the dark forest. On the other hand, the forest was rather cool. For some unknown reason, the number of people in the forest was increasing. From time to time, large groups of figures could be seen on the small paths in all directions. After which, they were all heading towards a certain place. On one of the small paths, a purple-robed young man was also walking slowly. He was neither fast nor slow, and his expression was indifferent. However, that invisible aura made the purple-robed young man stand out among the numerous figures in the surroundings. He gave off the feeling of a crane standing among a flock of chickens. For a young man to walk alone in the dark forest, he already stood out like a crane among chickens. The purple-robed young man was Du Xiaofu. During these few days, Du Xiaofu had not been idle. Other than cultivating his mental energy and comprehending the wave-treading carefree steps and rock-ascending the 9 heavens, he had been dealing with the people from the Black Fiend sect. Of course, the results were extremely significant. The enemy was in the open while he was in the dark. Du Xiaofu's results were gratifying, and he had also vented a lot of the resentment in his heart. However, Du Xiaofu wasn't a fool. He wouldn't continue to kill the people from the Black Fiend sect in the same place. Du Xiaofu understood his own strength the best. He might be able to deal with ordinary people from the Black Fiend sect, but if he were to encounter experts from the Black Fiend sect, he definitely wouldn't be able to handle them. Thus, it was best for him to leave as soon as possible. From the conversations he had with the people he had met on the road these past few days, Du Xiaofu learned that there was a place called Dark Forest Town not far from here. It was a place where people from all sides of the dark forest would settle down in Dark Forest Town. Of course, Du Xiaofu wasn't someone to be trifled with. Along the way, he had captured a few people he didn't like and interrogated them. He found out about the various factions in the Dark Forest and the direction to Tianwu Academy. The reason why Du Xiaofu came to Dark Forest Town was because he heard that passing through Dark Forest Town was the shortest path to Tianwu Academy. Furthermore, the Black Fiends sect was searching for him everywhere. The most dangerous place might also be the safest place. Du Xiaofu felt that he might as well enter Dark Forest Town openly and let the Black Fiend sect search for him all over the Dark Forest. On a small path in the dense forest, a lady was supporting an old man as they walked slowly. The lady raised her head slightly. She looked to be in her 20s, but her face was filled with freckles and her skin was yellowish. She looked extremely ugly. "Grandfather, Dark Forest Town is just ahead. We're almost there." Looking through a stretch of towering trees, she could vaguely see the outline of a large building in the dense forest. A smile appeared on the lady's face, but the freckles and yellowish skin on her face made her look unsightly. It was hard to imagine that there would be such an ugly lady in the world. "We're finally here." The old man stopped in his tracks, revealing a skinny and tanned face. His entire body was skinny and he wore a plain long gown. It was as though he was carrying a cloth bag on a bamboo pole. His bony chest was stuck to his long gown, faintly resembling strips of blinds. The old man and the ugly lady beside him stood together. One was old while the other was ugly, but they looked extremely harmonious. "Grandpa, we have found so many people but they were all unable to do anything. Could it be that the person in this small town in the dark forest is stronger than the people we found?" The ugly woman supported the old man. There seemed to be some doubt in her eyes. "Fair, you're a smart girl. You can understand everything with just a hint. However, don't underestimate the dark forest. There are many crouching tigers and hidden dragons inside. For so many years, no one has dared to touch the dark forest and break the balance. Other than the fact that the dark forest is a chaotic place filled with desperados, the bigger reason is that there are many crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the dark forest. If you provoke those people, the consequences will be dire." The old man said softly and then smiled. At this moment, a few rays of sunlight shone through the gaps in the leaves and shone on his tanned face, causing the old man's face to smile very vividly under the sunlight. The wrinkles on his face seemed to be swimming in joy, and the wrinkles on his face were like small paths that covered the fields. "This place is indeed chaotic," the lady said softly. The old man stretched his limping body, which made his already skinny body look like a long mulberry stick. Then, he said to the woman, "This is the dark forest. This is the synonym for darkness and chaos. If you want to survive here, there are only 3 words." "Grandpa, those 3 words?" the lady asked curiously, as if she wanted to talk more with the old man. It was rare to see her grandpa so happy today. "Strength and ruthlessness." The old man said, "Be more ruthless than the opponent, be stronger than the opponent, be more ruthless than the opponent, these are the rules of survival here." Looks like Grandpa is extremely familiar with this place. The ugly lady smiled, but her voice was extremely pleasant to the ears. "Ao." At this moment, an astonishing roar was heard. Then, several demonic beasts that were 1 foot tall and 2 feet long could be seen galloping over from the back of the path. These demonic beasts looked like wolves but were not wolves, like horses but not horses. Their bodies were completely black, and they were a demonic beast mount that was not rare in the dark forest. Although the level of the dark wolf horse was not high, it had excellent endurance and speed. It had no problem traversing mountains and valleys. Therefore, it was the favorite mount of many escort companies and hunting groups. However, it was also not cheap. At this moment, several figures were seated on the backs of these dark wolf horses. Occasionally, there would be some people in the surroundings, but they did not want to cause trouble as they moved aside one after another. Although many people had moved aside, their gazes were extremely ugly. The disheveled old man and ugly lady in front, move aside. Otherwise, you can't blame others if we trample you to death. In the blink of an eye, the dark wolf horses had galloped over as loud roars were heard. However, they had no intention of stopping. Perhaps in their hearts, if they were unable to dodge, then they deserved to be trampled to death. After all, this was not the first time they had been trampled to death by their mounts. Ao. At lightning speed, the dark wolf horses arrived behind the old man and the ugly lady in the blink of an eye. It looked like the two of them would either be trampled to death or be directly trampled to death by the dark wolf horses. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Suddenly, several whooshing sounds resounded in the air. In the blink of an eye, several faint golden rays of light swept across the sky and instantly collided with the dark wolf horses. Ao. Suddenly, a deep muffled sound rang out. The rays of light seemed to contain a terrifying force. The dark wolf horses roared miserably as their huge bodies were directly flipped over and fell to the ground. Bang bang bang. The small path was instantly thrown into chaos. The people on the dark wolf horses were also immediately thrown into the air. One by one, they fell to the ground in a very sorry state. Dear brothers, I originally wanted to update 7 chapters today. However, it's already 3 in the morning and Xiao Yu has only completed 6 chapters. I've let everyone down. It seems like it's Chinese Valentine's Day now. I wish all my brothers and sisters a happy Chinese Valentine's Day. Tomorrow, I will continue to sacrifice my happiness and work hard to write. You all must give me your flowers. Today's update is done. Brothers who have not slept, please rest early. Chapter 180. Following the shocking commotion here, the gazes of many people in the surrounding area immediately came from afar. Some of the bolder ones even directly surrounded them. They seem to be from Free Cloud's sect. Dark Forest Town is the territory of Free Cloud's sect. Dark Forest Town is right in front of us. Who would dare to provoke Free Cloud's sect? Amidst the chaos, the skinny old man and the ugly woman barely dodged the charge of the dark wolf horse. Which bastard did this? Get the hell out here. The dozen or so burly men on the ground hurriedly stood up. All of them had unshaven beards, as if they had not groomed themselves for a long time. Their faces were covered in dirt from the fall, and they were in a very sorry state. Their gazes swept across their surroundings, and they naturally saw that someone had used a rock to smash their mounts. As more than a dozen ferocious-looking burly men roared, no one stood out. Instead, many people who were originally close to the scene moved away, afraid of provoking an unexpected disaster. The dozen or so burly men couldn't find the culprit who had smashed their mounts, and no one stepped forward. For a moment, they couldn't get off the stage. These dozen or so people were actually not stupid. Someone who could throw a rock at them and cause them to fall off their horses was probably not weak. They couldn't just randomly grab a person from the surroundings. They might encounter a force that they couldn't afford to offend. Although the Free Cloud gang behind them was not weak, in the entire dark forest, it was nothing. If not for the fact that they had a powerful backer behind them, they would not have dared to be so arrogant. After all, among the people who came to Dark Forest Town, there were not many who were easy to deal with. At this moment, there was only a purple-robed young man who looked to be 16 or 17 years old. However, he was strolling over from the front. His expression was indifferent, as if he did not know that there was a complete mess in front of him. The dozen or so burly men were unable to find the culprit and were unable to find a way out of their rage. At this moment, they saw a purple-robed young man recklessly walking over. Wasn't this clearly making them even more embarrassed? They were just about to find someone to vent their anger on. A burly man in his 30s, who was wearing a short-sleeved shirt, stared fiercely at the purple-robed youth who was slowly walking over. He angrily shouted, "Brat, tell me, did you do it?" The purple-robed youth was naturally Du Xiaofu. He looked at the large man in front of him and raised his head slightly. Compared to the large man's muscular and tall body, he could not help but appear rather thin. He blinked his eyes and weakly said, "Which eye of yours saw that it was me?" As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, the surrounding people were suddenly stunned. Hearing the tone of the purple-robed youth, the surrounding onlookers knew that a good show was definitely going to happen. The purple-robed youth was probably going to be in big trouble. He had directly hit the muzzle of a gun. Cough cough, the skinny old man and the ugly woman at this time also looked at Du Xiaofu. As if he had just been frightened, the skinny old man kept coughing, as if his lungs were about to be coughed out. The ugly woman had been supporting the skinny old man. Her eyes were filled with worry as she constantly patted the old man's back. Kiki. The burly man originally wanted to deliberately find trouble with this brat to vent his anger, but he did not expect to be choked by this young man instead. It was obvious that this young man did not take them seriously. His expression immediately changed and a cold smile appeared on his face. He said, "Brat who is still wet behind the ears, do you think you have lived long enough? If I don't teach you a lesson today, you won't know that this is Dark Forest Town." Du Xiaofu looked at the sneering burly man and immediately took a step back. His face was filled with frustration and helplessness. He said, "What do you want to do? Don't come over. Otherwise, I will beat you. Bastard, you are fucking courting death." The burly man felt that he was being teased and immediately stomped his foot on the ground. Following the sound of an energy explosion, a shallow footprint was left under his foot. Then, he viciously threw a punch at Du Xiaofu's head. "You really want me to beat you?" Just as the casserole-like fist appeared in front of his face, Du Xiaofu's expression suddenly changed and a cold smile appeared on his face. He did not dodge and directly threw a punch. Golden Xian Qi condensed on his fist and a fierce and domineering energy ripple directly spread out. Bang! Crack! A deep sonic boom was mixed with the sound of bones breaking. Just when everyone thought that the purple-robed young man was unlucky, they saw that the burly man's fist had withered. The burly man's face twitched in intense pain and blood spurted out from the corner of his mouth. However, he could not even let out a scream as his body was sent flying. After falling over a dozen meters away, he had already become a corpse. Everyone was stunned and the surroundings immediately became silent as if they could not believe it. The burly man just now had a cultivation of the initial pulsation realm and his strength was passable. They did not expect that he would be killed by a single punch from the purple-robed young man. This brat is difficult to deal with. Let's destroy this brat together. At the same time that the leading burly man shouted, a purple-robed figure had already appeared in front of him. The figure was like a ghost, causing him to want to dodge. However, he did not know why, but he felt that he could not dodge at all. Then, a deep sound came from his chest and a fist wrapped in golden Xian Qi landed on his chest. A terrifying force poured out and instantly destroyed his internal organs. Pfft! Before the leading burly man could finish speaking, the blood in his mouth mixed with his shattered internal organs came into contact with the ground. Then, he fell to the ground and could not be more dead. Silence. The surroundings were deathly silent. Everyone was flabbergasted, as if they did not dare to imagine the scene before their eyes. That young man who still smelled of his mother's milk was actually so terrifying. No wonder he dared to appear in the dark forest alone. The remaining 10 or so burly men were still shouting loudly. However, at this moment, all of their faces were filled with fear and they did not dare to move at all. The leader was killed with a single punch. They were probably not even worth a fart. The young man in front of them who looked easy to bully was actually a fiend that they could not afford to provoke. The dark forest is indeed a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. The ugly woman's gaze looked at the purple-robed young man. Her face was covered with freckles and dark skin, but her eyes were extremely bright. "All of you scram. If you don't scram, I will beat all of you." Looking at the burly man whose eyes were filled with fear, Du Xiaofu lightly shouted. He did not want to cause any more trouble, in case the Black Fiend sect noticed. If it were not for the fact that it was an old man and a woman, Du Xiaofu would not have planned to make a move. Let's go, let's go. One by one, the burly men acted as if they had just been pardoned. They immediately pulled the few dark wolf horses which had been smashed by the rocks and ran away. What a terrifying young man. I wonder where he came from. He dares to attack the Free Cloud sect in the dark forest. I guess he has some background. Du Xiaofu patted his sleeves and ignored the discussions and stares of the crowd. In the dark forest, Du Xiaofu was very clear about the rules of survival. Only with absolute strength would one be able to survive. Once he displayed his absolute strength, no one would dare to provoke him. Grandpa, that young man has left. The ugly woman looked at Du Xiaofu's back and said to the skinny old man who was supporting her. Cough, the skinny old man coughed slightly, and a smile appeared on his dark and wrinkled face. Then he sighed and said, You see, there are many crouching tigers and hidden dragons here. With this young man's age, compared to those silk pants in the family, he is not even worth a fart. Grandpa, these words are a little too much. There are a few in the family who are not bad. Even compared to the juniors in the Du household, they are not inferior. The freckled woman smiled and said. Fei, your eyesight has always been pretty good. Can't you see that just now, that brat was almost using the power of his physical body? Just by relying on the power of his physical body, he was able to easily take care of a perfect pulsation realm martial artist. Just how powerful is his own strength? Moreover, that young man's level of cultivation is definitely not high. I'm afraid that even if the juniors in the Du household are intentionally hiding, they might not be able to compare to this young man. The old man said with interest. Looks like my eyesight needs to be improved from Grandpa. The freckled woman smiled, her snow-white teeth faintly visible. She looked at the old man and said, It is rare for Grandpa to have such a high evaluation of a young man. Could it be that Grandpa has some thoughts? I'm an old man with one foot in the grave. What thoughts can I have? It's just that the young man is a little too young. If he was a few years older, it would be appropriate to betroth you to him. At that time, that young man can be considered half a member of our Xie family. Perhaps in the future, we can rely on him to suppress the Du family. The old man sighed and said, If we rely on those silk pants in the family now, I'm afraid that in less than 10 years, the Xie family will be completely suppressed by the Du family. Grandpa, are you making fun of me again? I've said before that I will not marry in this life, and will always serve Grandpa. The freckled woman said with a smile. She revealed a hint of gentleness before the old man. Judging from her back, she should be an extremely charming woman. However, her face was covered in freckles and her dark complexion caused others to not dare to look at her for too long. How can a girl not marry? Who asked you to not be interested in ordinary people? What's the use of accompanying an old man like me? The skinny old man said. All right, Grandpa, let's go into the town. I hope the person you're looking for is here. Otherwise, we've come for nothing. The freckled woman said. The old man said, Even if he's here, it's useless. If he's in a bad mood, it's useless to look for him. Dark Forest Town, a small town in the dark forest. Although it was called a town, it was not as big as the towns outside. It was said that a long time ago, Dark Forest Town only had a few wooden houses and a place that sold wine and food. After a long time, more and more people came to stay. Thus, there were shops, wine shops, and even brothels. Last night, I rode until 3 o'clock. After that, I only went to bed after 4 o'clock. Today, unfortunately, I woke up late, causing today's update to be late. I apologize to everyone. Xiao Yu continues to write and also continues to ask for flowers. Chapter 181. As a result, more and more people came to settle down, and the number of shops, taverns, and brothels increased as well. Under such a cycle, Dark Forest Town was formed today. Du Xiaofu walked into Dark Forest Town and blended into the crowd. There were all kinds of people in Dark Forest Town, and on the bustling streets, no one would pay much attention to a youth. In a place like Dark Forest Town, men were definitely not as eye-catching as women. On both sides of the street, there were many shops, and many people had set up stalls to peddle their wares. They sold all kinds of things, demonic beast materials, demonic beast corpses, and even demonic beast mounts. Of course, the demonic beast materials and demonic beast mounts were not too high in rank. In addition, there were also many elixirs for sale, and even cultivation techniques and martial skills for sale. There was a dazzling array, too many to count. Although the entire town was not as prosperous and crowded as the city outside, its liveliness was not the slightest bit inferior. Sounds of hawking, clamoring, and occasionally quarreling could be heard. All of these gathered together, making it extremely noisy. Mixed in with the crowd, Du Xiaofu deliberately did not attract too much attention, so as to avoid being noticed by the people from the Black Fiend sect. With the Black Fiend sect's influence, there should be people in Dark Forest Town. Little brother, come here quickly. Suddenly, the voice of a woman in her 30s rang out. Du Xiaofu was sizing up the lively scene in the surrounding streets. When he heard the voice, he immediately looked to the left, and saw a woman in her 30s waving at him. Are you calling me? Du Xiaofu was stunned, as if he did not know this woman. Of course I'm calling you, I saw you from afar, such a handsome young man is rare in Dark Forest Town. The woman smiled slightly, her eyes constantly sizing up Du Xiaofu, her eyes overflowing with charm, as if they were about to burst into flames. But I don't know you. Du Xiaofu was extremely puzzled, he did not seem to know this woman. Silly brother, you will know each other in the future. Come in with me, I have everything. As long as you want it, I can get it for you. The woman was very enthusiastic and immediately pulled Du Xiaofu intimately into her arms. Do you have frost jade orange flower and crown lotus? Du Xiaofu asked, secretly wondering if this woman was also selling elixirs, but his feet involuntarily took half a step back. This time, he came to Dark Forest Town to find two extremely difficult to find elixirs. Double Flight, Orange Flower, and Guanyin Lotus. When the woman saw Du Xiaofu take a step back, she originally thought that he was still an inexperienced boy, but when she heard this, she was immediately stunned, her eyes seemed to be about to drip water, she twisted her plump buttocks and stuck to Du Xiaofu, saying, So little brother is an expert, don't worry, I have everything, I can definitely satisfy you, even the poisonous dragon drill, quickly come upstairs with me. As her voice fell, the woman directly pulled Du Xiaofu to a small alley by the side of the street, and directly went upstairs. Solitary dragons, are there such demonic beasts? Du Xiaofu muttered with a face full of doubt, then asked, Is the price expensive? Little brother, don't worry, the price is fair, it's only 5 cultivation coins, even if you don't pay, seeing how handsome you are, it's fine even if I don't charge you. How can it be so cheap? It can't be, Guanyin Lotus is at least 100,000 cultivation coins. Du Xiaofu was shocked, and then was dizzily dragged upstairs by the woman. That little brat is really an expert, he's definitely an expert, at such a young age, he's actually so familiar with the game. I guess that little brat came from outside, he was bored in the dark forest, so he played so ruthlessly as soon as he came to town. Hee, the woman upstairs has been doing good business recently, wait until I sell these demonic beast materials, I also want to go up and play. Seeing Du Xiaofu being dragged upstairs by the woman wearing revealing clothes, a few burly men who set up a stall on the side of the street all laughed evilly. Boom! Just a few minutes later, the wall on the top of the building suddenly shattered, bricks flew everywhere, and dust filled the air. Suddenly, under the surprised gazes of the people on the street, a purple-robed young man directly broke through the wall and fell to the ground. He didn't dare to stop, and immediately ran away in panic. Little brat, my demonic beast materials. My head, it was hit by a brick, little brat. Loud curses were heard, and several people who set up a stall downstairs were directly smashed by the bricks. Fortunately, they escaped quickly, but the stall was submerged by the bricks. "Little bastard, even if you don't want to play, don't tear down my building, you have to compensate me." Through the hole in the wall, a disheveled woman angrily cursed and chased after him, but she didn't dare to jump down. As for the purple-robed youth, he fled into the street and immediately disappeared into the crowd. "That was close, I almost lost my virginity." After a full 3 streets, Du Xiaofu came to a quiet street, and only then did he stop. Originally, he only wanted to buy frost jade orange flower and crown lotus, but he didn't expect that when he went upstairs, his clothes were almost taken off by someone, and he was so scared that he immediately broke through the wall and fled. "Medicine hut, it should be here." On a rather deserted street, a skinny old man who looked like a mulberry stick said to a freckled woman beside him. A slight smile appeared on his tanned face, and there seemed to be some faint fluctuations in his eyes that were faintly discernible. The freckled woman looked at an inconspicuous shop in front of her. It didn't even look like a shop, and only the 2 words "Medicine Hut" hanging on the door proved that it was indeed a shop. The 2 of them slowly walked into the shop. Everything inside was rather simple, and many places were even covered in dust. The old-fashioned counter looked as though it had not been changed for 100 years. Within the space of a few dozen meters, there were only a few scattered pieces of low-ranked elixirs and elixirs placed on the counter. Behind the counter, there was an old man wearing a gray robe, leaning against the wall and resting with his eyes slightly closed. He seemed to be unaware that someone had entered. "Please," the freckled woman slightly raised her head and looked at the gray-robed old man with his eyes slightly closed. Just as she was about to open her mouth and ask, another person suddenly walked into the shop. The freckled woman slightly glanced over, and her gaze slightly moved. She was rather surprised, as she didn't expect it to be the purple-robed young man. Du Xiaofu ran 3 streets, not because he was teased by a woman, but because he had caused quite a commotion. In order to avoid being seen by the people from the Black Fiend sect, he might as well run as far as possible. When he arrived at a street that had suddenly become somewhat quiet, Du Xiaofu slightly raised his head and looked over. There seemed to be a shop not far in front of him. He slowly walked over and saw a signboard with the words "Medicine Hut" hanging on it. It should be a shop that sold medicinal ingredients, and he walked in. However, what surprised Du Xiaofu was that there were actually 2 familiar figures in the shop. They were the skinny old man and the freckled woman he had seen outside of Dark Forest Town. This caused Du Xiaofu to be rather surprised. However, to Du Xiaofu, this wasn't anything worth paying attention to. As he began to size up the entire shop, the scattered dust within the shop made Du Xiaofu slightly frown. This shop was cold and cheerless, and it didn't seem like it was doing business at all. There was also a gray-robed old man behind the counter, leaning against the wall with his eyes slightly closed. There seemed to be some saliva flowing out of his mouth, and he actually looked like he was asleep. Since he had already entered the shop, Du Xiaofu casually looked around. There were bits and pieces of elixirs and pills, as if they were being sold at a clearance sale. Their grades weren't high, and there wasn't anything that caught Du Xiaofu's attention. In this shop, there were really only bits and pieces of elixirs and pills, and there was nothing else. Du Xiaofu slightly sized up the shop, and casually asked the sleeping old man behind the counter, "Shopkeeper, do you have crown lotus and frost jade orange flowers?" You clearly saw that there are no crown lotus and frost jade orange flowers in this shop, but you still asked me. Are you purposely disturbing my sleep? If you're not buying anything, then leave. Don't disturb my sleep. The sleeping old man behind the counter didn't even open his eyes, and his tone wasn't very friendly. Du Xiaofu was stunned. He really didn't expect this shopkeeper to be so good at doing business. No wonder this shop was so cold and cheerless. He smiled bitterly and was about to walk out of the shop when suddenly, the ground began to shake, as if an earthquake was about to happen. Ao. At the same time, the roars of many demonic beasts could be heard from afar, and they were getting closer and closer, causing the ground to shake. Rumble. There were no less than 40 dark wolf horses galloping, stirring up dust and filling the sky. On the back of each dark wolf horse, there were several burly men with powerful auras. They stirred up dust and sand, and finally, they came to a stop at the entrance of the medicinal hut in an overbearing manner. Shwa shwa. 200 men dismounted from their horses, each of them wielding a broadsword. Their aura was fierce, and killing intent filled the air. In an instant, it enveloped the entire medicinal hut. What's going on? Who is Free Cloud's sect dealing with? Even sect leader Lu Tianxiao has personally come. Although it was a deserted street, quite a number of onlookers quickly gathered at this moment. Even in the neighboring street, when they sensed such a huge commotion, a large number of people began to swarm over. No matter where it was, there would be no lack of people who wanted to watch the show. More than 200 men were brimming with killing intent, and each of them wielded a broadsword. There were 3 men in the lead, and their auras were even more vigorous and fierce. Sect leader, our men have been secretly following him, and finally found out that the kid had entered this place. A man with the face of a rat stepped forward and spoke to the man in the lead, who was dressed in tight clothing. Surround him, don't let even a fly escape. The man in tight clothing waved his hand, and the men behind him immediately surrounded the entrance of the medicinal hut. Each of them wielded a broadsword, and looked murderous. Let me tell everyone a piece of bad news. Little Yu originally thought that he was useless, and wouldn't be able to meet any girls today. However, he was really invited by someone. Hence, Little Yu wants to go out for a meal, and maybe even watch a movie. I won't be updating today, it's a holiday. However, today's update is normal, and I'll update it tomorrow. Alright, I'm going out for a holiday. Chapter 182. That purple-robed brat, come out and accept your death. A sinister voice rang out, as numerous gazes were fixed on the entrance of the medicine shop. Within the shop, Du Xiaofu's face darkened slightly as he slowly walked out. The skinny old man and the freckled lady exchanged glances, before slowly walking out of the shop as well. Association leader, elder, it's that brat. He's the one who killed our men. As Du Xiaofu walked out of the shop, numerous gazes immediately fell upon Du Xiaofu's body. Among the group of men wielding machetes, several burly men stepped forward and pointed at Du Xiaofu as they spoke to the 3 men at the front. Many people looked at Du Xiaofu with surprise in their eyes, especially the 3 people who had the strongest aura fluctuations. Their eyes were even more surprised. That purple-robed young man looked like he was still wet behind the ears. Was his strength really as extraordinary as the disciple had described? Du Xiaofu's gaze swept across the crowd, and it was not difficult for him to identify these men. Among them, there were 10 burly men who had been released from Dark Forest Town not long ago. Their faces darkened slightly as their gazes fell upon the 3 men at the front. Initial Pulse Spirit Stage, Pulse Spirit Stage Mysterious, Pulse Spirit Stage Nirvana Realm. The 3 men at the front were all Pulse Spirit Stage cultivators. From the fact that they did not conceal their auras, Du Xiaofu could easily guess their cultivation levels. Of the 3 Pulse Spirit Stage cultivators, the man in the middle had the highest cultivation level, having reached the Nirvana realm. Among the 3 men in the middle, a burly man on the left took 2 steps forward. He was dressed in tight clothes, and the muscles on his arms bulged as if they were about to rip his clothes apart. His gaze was cold as he stared straight at Du Xiaofu and said, "Brat, you killed my Free Cloud gang's men. Kill yourself, and I'll leave your corpse intact." So it was that brat who killed the Free Cloud gang's men. No wonder Lu Tianxiao came personally to kill them in Dark Forest. That brat is like a newborn calf that is not afraid of tigers. He actually dared to kill Free Cloud gang's men in Dark Forest. He's simply courting death. At this point, the crowd of onlookers started to discuss amongst themselves. Following the words of the burly man, everyone knew why Free Cloud's sect was so furious. Du Xiaofu slowly took 2 steps forward. His resolute face was indifferent. He looked at the strong man who spoke and said, "Get lost from where you came from. I don't want to kill anyone today. Don't provoke me." At this time, Du Xiaofu really didn't want to make a move. Dark Forest Town wasn't small, so there would definitely be people from the Black Fiend's sect. If someone from the Black Fiend's sect were to recognize his identity, then it would be really troublesome. Is this kid an idiot? As soon as Du Xiaofu's words rang out, regardless of whether it was the Free Cloud sect or the crowd of spectators, when they heard Du Xiaofu's words, they all paused for a moment before bursting into laughter. Kiki, the strong man, was the first to speak. His face was filled with killing intent, and a mocking smile appeared on it. His gloomy face twitched slightly as he laughed coldly. "You think you can do it? Kid, I, Xiongli, have been in Dark Forest for so many years. I've seen all kinds of people. However, this is the first time I've seen someone like you, who's still wet behind the ears. You're courting death." Pursing his lips, Du Xiaofu didn't waste any more words with the strong man. A Pulse Spirit Realm cultivator, Du Xiaofu really didn't put him in his eyes. In the past few days, he had killed quite a number of Pulse Spirit Realm cultivators from the Black Fiend sect. Among the people from Free Cloud sect, only the strongest Pulse Spirit Realm cultivator at the Nirvana realm could pose a threat to him. Du Xiaofu didn't say anything else. Instead, he slowly walked towards the strong man. Following Du Xiaofu's actions, a murderous aura flashed across the strong man's sneering and mocking face. His killing intent shot out, and his fat face instantly became ferocious and terrifying. He really did look a little like a ferocious bear. "Kid, you're courting death." The strong man shouted loudly. He stomped his feet on the ground, causing the ground to tremble. His strong body was extremely fast, and like lightning, he pounced towards Du Xiaofu. His cold and gloomy face sneered. His profound qi surged, and his hand slapped out like a bear's paw, causing the air to explode with a crackling sound. It directly slapped towards Du Xiaofu. Just as the strong man's body was about to move, a faint golden profound qi quickly spread out around Du Xiaofu's body. A faint golden light spread out, and instantly, it seemed to envelop his entire body. Just as the strong man's palm was about to hit him, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He raised his hand and fiercely punched the strong man's palm. Bang, 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 wherever the fist passed, there were 13 muffled sounds in the air. After that, it directly hit the strong man's palm. Boom! When the fist and palm collided, an extremely strong energy wave immediately rippled out from the point of impact. A fierce energy wave violently surged out. Then, the ground under the strong man's feet quietly cracked open. His gloomy and murderous gaze instantly turned into a look of horror. Poochie! Then, a terrifying tidal wave of wind directly caused the strong man's body to fly away like a kite with a broken string. At this moment, his strong body was like a fragile bamboo that was blown away by a strong wind. In the end, he fiercely smashed into the ground more than 10 meters away. He spat out large mouthfuls of blood and did not get up again. Free Cloud sect's Xiongli was actually unable to withstand a single blow from that kid. The surrounding onlookers were dumbfounded as they watched the scene unfold in front of them. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Xiong Li's cultivation was at the initial stage of the Pulse Spirit stage. In the entire Dark Forest town, he was extremely powerful. But now, he was actually killed in a single blow. At this moment, the surrounding onlookers finally understood why the purple-robed youth dared to kill the Free Cloud sex people in Dark Forest town. Little bastard, I, Lu Tianxiao, swear that today, I will definitely turn your bones into ashes. In a short moment, just as the burly man was blown away by Du Xiaofu's punch, the man in the black robe's face twitched fiercely. He roared furiously, and his body shot out, and a fist fiercely blasted toward Du Xiaofu. The person who attacked was the Free Cloud sect's leader, Lu Tianxiao. In front of his fist, there seemed to be runes flashing. Its power was terrifying. The energy wave rippled like waves, swift and fierce. Facing a pulse spirit stage Nirvana realm cultivator, Du Xiaofu's eyes narrowed slightly. At this moment, he was also a threat to himself. His hand seals changed and condensed. A faint golden Xian Qi suddenly surged. Only at the pulse stage mystery realm. Unbelievable. As Du Xiaofu's body suddenly released a huge wave of energy, the skinny old man at the entrance of the shop suddenly revealed a look of surprise on his dark, wrinkled face. The faint golden Xian Qi surged. A palm print was sent out from Du Xiaofu's hand. The energy wave around the palm print was like a stormy sea. The overlapping energy waves directly collided with Lu Tianxiao's fist under the shocked gazes of many. Bang! When the two collided, the sound of an energy explosion rang out. The former's fierce and vigorous fist energy was directly pushed back by Du Xiaofu in the most barbaric way. It was a kind of forceful suppression. Dang dang! But at the same time, under the impact of the opponent's vigorous and fierce Xian Qi energy, Du Xiaofu's feet also staggered back at the same time. Every step he took, the ground would emit a ka-ka sound. Gravel and dust were sent flying. Cracks spread out from the dust under his feet. After 3 steps, he stabilized his body. Pulse stage mystery realm. How is this possible? Lu Tianxiao was also pushed back 2 steps. After the second step, he stabilized his body. The ground beneath his feet also started to crack. His gloomy and murderous eyes were filled with shock. Then, his eyes were still covered with killing intent. He curled his lips and said disdainfully, "So you only have some brute strength. With your pulse stage mystery realm cultivation, you actually have the guts to kill my Free Cloud sex people. No matter what, you're dead today." Du Xiaofu did not pay any attention to Lu Tianxiao's words. He stamped his foot on the ground, and Xian Qi swept out from his feet. Borrowing the force of the Xian Qi, his body suddenly flew out. He used the wave-treading free steps. In an instant, he appeared in front of Lu Tianxiao like a ghost. Bang! Faint golden Xian Qi surged in his hand. Clenching his 5 fingers, Du Xiaofu's fist directly punched towards Lu Tianxiao's head. It was a simple punch, but it was clean and neat. Its power was like thunder. "Humph, you're courting death," Lu Tianxiao shouted coldly. However, he was shocked and surprised by Du Xiaofu's speed. That terrifying purple-robed youth was not only fast, but also unpredictable. It was accompanied by a fierce and domineering aura. Therefore, Lu Tianxiao used all his strength. Relying on the advantage and suppression of his cultivation, he immediately exchanged blows with Du Xiaofu. Lu Tianxiao naturally knew his own advantages, and he also knew the advantages of the terrifying purple-robed youth. His speed was ridiculously fast, and his movements were unpredictable. If it wasn't for the fact that Lu Tianxiao had an advantage in terms of cultivation level, it would have been difficult to defend against him. Even so, every time their attacks collided, he would be fiercely pushed back by his opponent. The brute strength of his body was even more terrifying than his unpredictable speed. Du Xiaofu also knew his own advantages. The toughness of his body and the wave-like carefree steps were his current advantages. However, his opponent was at the pulse realm of the Nirvana realm. His opponent's strength was definitely not ordinary. His defense was also impenetrable. Every attack would be forcefully blocked by his opponent using his cultivation advantage. It was definitely not an easy task to deal with a pulse realm of the Nirvana realm cultivator. Bang, bang, bang. Amidst the low sonic booms, the exchange of blows between the two could be described as dazzling. Those with lower cultivation couldn't even see it clearly. From time to time, there would be a low muffled sound of energy. Vast and mighty energy surged. The surrounding gravel shot out violently. Sand and pebbles flew everywhere. The onlookers kept retreating. Following the exchange of blows between the two in the field, the freckled woman at the entrance of the shop, who was originally rather calm, started to show signs of shock. I won't tell you that in my dream, I thought I was already writing a lot of words. Flowers and rewards were flying everywhere. After I got up, I realized that I was still lying on the bed and hadn't gotten up. Everything was just an illusion. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm crying. I'm rushing to write. Chapter 183. To possess this level of movement and physical strength, he must have come from an extraordinary place. Where did this kid come from? On the skinny old man's dark, wrinkled face, there was a hint of doubt in his eyes, and his gaze became more and more doubtful. Pang! 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 The clash in the arena became more and more intense, and the low rumbling sounds of energy could be heard everywhere. The surrounding spectators had originally thought that the purple-robed youth was dead for sure, but now they were all shocked. The powerful purple-robed youth was actually able to stand toe-to-toe with Lu Tianxiao. From the looks of it, the purple-robed youth had never placed Free Cloud's sect in his eyes. After exchanging over 10 blows, Lu Tianxiao became more and more shocked. He had originally thought that the purple-robed youth in front of him only had brute strength. How strong could a pulsating stage mystical realm cultivator be? But after exchanging blows with him, Lu Tianxiao finally understood how terrifying this purple-robed youth was. He was actually able to stand toe-to-toe with him. One must know that in terms of physical strength, Lu Tianxiao had always been somewhat conceited about himself. This kid's cultivation technique must be at least of the Xian grade. And that strange movement technique is not ordinary either. If I can get my hands on it, I'll be rich. Lu Tianxiao muttered in his heart as he stared intently at the ever-changing purple-robed figure. Greed gradually surged in his cold eyes. I can't drag this on any longer. If I can't even deal with a kid who's still wet behind the ears, I'm afraid I'll become the laughing stock of the entire Dark Forest town. Free Cloud sect's power and influence will also be greatly reduced. As this thought flashed through his mind, Lu Tianxiao's expression became more and more ruthless. Pang! The two of them clashed once again, and then separated. Lu Tianxiao took advantage of the momentum to retreat, his eyes filled with ruthlessness. At the same time, a broad-backed scimitar appeared in his hand. Boom! As the scimitar appeared in his hand, its power was astonishing. The scimitar seemed to have a life of its own, and its killing intent surged. Runes surged, and the surrounding energy of heaven and earth fluctuated, as if it was gathering towards the broad-backed scimitar. Obviously, it was not something an ordinary weapon could compare to. Just the power and might of the scimitar alone was enough to cause those with lower cultivation to tremble in fear. Lu Tianxiao is going all out. He's even using the violent profound saber. The violent profound saber is a true spirit artifact. I wonder if that purple-robed youth can withstand it. With the broad-backed scimitar in hand, Lu Tianxiao's aura suddenly soared once again. With the spiritual artifact, the violent profound saber, he had killed countless people of the same cultivation level. Even if he met someone of a higher cultivation level than him, he would still be able to fight back. This was one of the main reasons why he was able to allow Free Cloud's sect to control Dark Forest Town. Runes spread out from the broad-backed scimitar. They seemed to be absorbing the energy fluctuations in the surrounding space, causing an energy vortex to form in the space around the scimitar. Gales whistled on the ground, causing sand and stones to fly. It was as if the vortex wanted to devour everything as terrifying energy gathered. Spirit weapon, huh? Du Xiaofu's gaze was fixed on the broad-backed scimitar in Lu Tianxiao's hand. He did not seem to have any weapons at the moment. However, this spirit weapon seemed to be quite extraordinary. His face turned serious as he raised his eyebrows. He reached into his robes and pulled out a palm-sized bronze stone. Lu Tianxiao did not believe that the purple-robed youth in front of him would be able to withstand it. He took a step forward and almost leaped into the air. He then swooped down. A terrifying aura erupted as he slashed down with his scimitar. He shouted, "Violent saber technique, go to hell." As his voice fell, the energy vortex around the violent profound saber suddenly stopped. Within the energy vortex, a saber light that seemed to have solidified appeared. It carried a fierce energy as it swept out in all directions. Xiao xiao, energy rippled, and the space trembled. The blade light shot toward Du Xiaofu, tearing through the air like a bomb. "It's so strong. Retreat quickly." Under such a terrifying energy fluctuation, the surrounding people retreated one after another. Once they were touched by the fierce energy fluctuation, the consequences would be unimaginable. That sharp and ferocious blade glow swept towards Du Xiaofu in an instant. Everyone's eyes were tightly focused on Du Xiaofu's body. Destroy. With a soft shout, the bronze mountain stone in Du Xiaofu's hand was suddenly wrapped in a golden light. Like an impact cannon, it directly slammed into the overlapping saber light. "Despicable human, you actually want me to block the saber for you? I will not let you off." This saber seems to be edible." A voice rang out from the bronze mountain peak. Immediately after, the voice was filled with surprise and even excitement. However, this voice was drowned in the terrifying energy fluctuation. For some reason, Du Xiaofu could hear it clearly. It was as if the voice was ringing in his mind. Walala. Under everyone's gaze, the purple-robed youth threw out a strange object. The light was dazzling. Golden talisman runes spread out and directly destroyed the layers of materialized saber light. The fierce saber light was destroyed as easily as breaking dry weeds. What kind of strange object is this? Lu Tianxiao, who swooped down, was shocked. The object wrapped in the golden talisman runes was overbearing and fierce. The aura that spread out made his heart tremble for no reason. However, he immediately suppressed the uneasy aura in his heart. The violent profound saber in his hand directly slashed at the object wrapped in the golden talisman runes. "Break!" Lu Tianxiao shouted. He did not believe that this strange object could withstand his violent profound saber. The saber light swept down, as if it was going to split the space. In an instant, it hit the object wrapped in the golden talisman runes. Swoosh swoosh. In a flash, under everyone's gaze, the energy of the golden spear collided violently. Then, under everyone's horrified gaze, the broad saber in Lu Tianxiao's hand slashed into the golden talisman runes. Heavens, am I seeing things? However, an incredible scene appeared. There seemed to be something terrifying inside the golden talisman runes. It directly swallowed the violent profound saber in Lu Tianxiao's hand. Kacha kacha, from the golden talisman runes, there was a crisp sound like a child eating potato chips. Then, the blade of the broad saber began to crack. Pieces of the blade disappeared. Lu Tianxiao's violent profound saber was wrapped in the golden talisman runes from the tip of the saber. Then, it disappeared. It strangely disappeared. Kacha kacha, only the kacha kacha sound, like firecrackers exploding, could be heard. How can this be? My violent profound saber. Lu Tianxiao's expression changed. His body was at a low altitude and he immediately retreated. However, he could not get rid of the golden talisman runes. In less than 2 breaths, the broad saber, which was at least 2 feet long, disappeared. It was eaten by the thing inside the golden talisman runes, all the way to the hilt. Dang dang. Lu Tianxiao's eyes were filled with shock as he fell to the ground. He staggered and retreated. The hilt of the saber fell to the ground. Then, it was wrapped by the golden talisman runes and was eaten clean. In the end, the golden talisman runes disappeared, revealing a bronze stone. What a strange thing. At the entrance of the shop, the skinny old man and the freckled woman were also surprised. The skinny old man and the freckled lady's gazes landed on the square. They did not turn their heads around to notice that the gray-clothed, long-robed old man, who had been sleeping with his eyes shut behind the counter, had suddenly opened his eyes at this moment. A glint flickered within his eyes before it disappeared in an instant. "Did you do it? You wastrel. That's a spiritual weapon. Why don't you leave it to me?" As the golden talisman runes disappeared, Du Xiaofu took a big step forward and grabbed the demon stone in his hand. His eyes were filled with shock and heartache. Du Xiaofu knew that the mountain peak stone was a demon stone. Moreover, it was an extraordinary demon stone. However, he did not expect the demon stone to be so abnormal. Not only could it swallow the elixir, it could even swallow the opponent's spiritual weapon. Du Xiaofu's original intention was to use the demon stone to resist the spiritual weapon. Directly swallowing the opponent's spiritual weapon was something that Du Xiaofu did not expect. The value of a spiritual weapon was absolutely terrifying. It was directly swallowed by the demon stone. At this moment, Du Xiaofu seemed to be more heartbroken than Lu Tianxiao. "I'm so full. I want to rest. Don't touch me again. Otherwise, I won't be able to play with you." The voice of the mountain peak stone came out from Du Xiaofu's mind. Then, the last of the talisman runes on the surface also dimmed. "Bastard, I'll deal with you later." Du Xiaofu immediately put the mountain peak stone into his arms. He made up his mind. When he had time, he must study this demon stone as soon as possible. It swallowed his spiritual weapon. This debt must be settled. In Du Xiaofu's mind, the opponent's spiritual weapon was already equivalent to his own. Everyone in the field was stunned. They could not believe that Lu Tianxiao's spiritual weapon had disappeared. It was as if it was eaten by a stone. "My spiritual weapon, bastard, little bastard, I will not let you go." After Lu Tianxiao recovered from his shock, he immediately went berserk. His heart was already bleeding. He didn't know how much effort he had put in, and he almost lost his life to obtain the violent profound saber. However, Lu Tianxiao did not expect that his spiritual weapon, the violent profound saber, would be destroyed by the purple-robed young man. His mood could be imagined. His eyes were almost spitting fire. His hand seals were constantly condensing. His whole body surged with light. Runes flashed and his aura surged again. Continue to write. Chapter 184. Lu Tianxiao is about to activate his arterial spirit. In a short moment, a terrifying aura erupted. Behind Lu Tianxiao, the vain spirit of a brownish-yellow demon wolf condensed. The runes glowed brightly, and its power was astonishing. The spectators found it difficult to breathe, and their xian qi was blocked. "Ayo!" The demon wolf howled, as if it was alive. Its terrifying aura raged violently. It was at least 3 zhang in size, and the surrounding heaven and earth energy rippled like boiling water. "Ayo!" As the demon wolf howled, the dozens of dark wolf horses in free clouds sect all howled and prostrated themselves on the ground, their eyes trembling. What a terrifying violent demon wolf vain spirit. It's a famous demon beast on the earth beast list. Lu Tianxiao's vain spirit is indeed strong. Its power is no less than a spirit weapon. "Kid, go to hell." Under the shocked gazes of the surrounding onlookers, Lu Tianxiao roared loudly and urged the violent demon wolf, which was as big as a living creature, to immediately pounce towards Du Xiaofu. "Ayo!" The violent demon wolf howled and pounced, as if it had become one with Lu Tianxiao. Its ferocious and terrifying aura swept through the surroundings, stirring the hearts of the spectators. Under such a terrifying aura, Du Xiaofu also moved. His hands formed a seal, and his entire body seemed to be bursting with domineering runes. "Ayo!" The violent dipper demon wolf's illusory figure was like a living creature as it instantly arrived in front of Du Xiaofu with a terrifying aura. It opened its malevolent large mouth, revealing its fangs that were covered in runes. A powerful energy fluctuation spread out from it, causing the surrounding space to tremble intensely. Can that purple-robed youth still withstand it? At this moment, many of the spectators were trembling, and their hearts were filled with worry for Du Xiaofu. Suddenly, just as the ferocious violent demon wolf pounced in front of Du Xiaofu's clear eyes flashed with a lightning-like light. The purple robe around his body instantly fluttered, and a loud shout came out of his mouth. Roar. His shout was like the roar of a dragon, like the cry of a divine elephant. A domineering aura spread out from Du Xiaofu's body, and cracks spread out from under his feet. Boom! The earth was trembling, space was trembling violently, and an overbearing and peerless aura surged. At this moment, the eyes on the tanned face of the skinny old man standing at the entrance of the shop also shone brightly. His expression was one of shock. In a split second, under the blurry gazes of the surrounding people, the seals formed by the hands of the purple-robed young man changed. The mysterious symbols released ripples, transforming into countless palm prints in a lightning-like manner. As the mysterious symbols cut through the air, they violently rushed out and violently collided with the violent dipper demon wolf's illusory figure. Buzz! Such a collision seemed to be mixed with the sound of wind and thunder. The muffled sound of energy that was like thunder suddenly resounded in this space. Rumble. In the blink of an eye, a terrifying energy ripple swept out like a stormy sea, causing the space to tremble violently. Under the terrifying aura fluctuations, it caused one's scalp to go numb and their hearts to palpitate. Walala, the energy dissipated, and the violent dipper demon wolf's illusory figure did not last long under the sweeping energy. It was directly destroyed and turned into runes that dissipated. Pfft! With the pulse spirit destroyed, Lu Tianxiao opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, his figure still followed the pulse spirit, passing through the terrifying energy storm and instantly appearing in front of Du Xiaofu. A claw print in his hand spread out runes, as if it was going to tear apart the space, and suddenly grabbed at Du Xiaofu's throat. It was almost impossible to dodge at such a close distance. The speed and strength of a pulse spirit realm nirvana realm cultivator, especially when it was an all-out attack, was definitely incomparably powerful. A faint golden light spread out from Du Xiaofu's eyes, revealing a bit of sharpness and terror. Using the wave-like carefree steps, he avoided his throat in an unbelievable arc. However, Lu Tianxiao's claw print still landed on Du Xiaofu's shoulder like a bolt of lightning, directly grabbing onto Du Xiaofu's left shoulder. Ka. The claw print landed, and the energy burst out, extremely dazzling. However, Lu Tianxiao's gaze changed drastically. His claw print landed on the other party's shoulder, destroying the defensive chi and tearing the robe on the shoulder. However, it was as if he had landed on the hardest rock, unable to move an inch further. At the same time, coldness gushed out from Du Xiaofu's eyes. A faint golden light surged around his body, and he opened his palm like a cattail leaf fan. Along with the flickering of faint golden runes, layer upon layer, it was as if a pair of golden wings had condensed around his palm in an instant. Sky-shaking wings. A domineering and ferocious aura suddenly spread out from Du Xiaofu's body and swept out, causing the space to tremble. Then, this hand also ruthlessly slapped Lu Tianxiao's body at close range. Bang! Before everyone could recover from their shock, they heard a low muffled sound mixed with the sound of bones breaking. Everyone's vision blurred, and then they saw Lu Tianxiao's body fly backward like a kite with a broken string. In the end, he fell heavily dozens of meters away. Bang! Where Lu Tianxiao landed, the ground trembled and cracks spread. Then, large amounts of blood spurted out from his mouth. Pfft! Du Xiaofu leapt up. Like a ferocious tiger, he instantly pounced on Lu Tianxiao who had landed on the ground. The moment Lu Tianxiao's body landed, his fist directly smashed into Lu Tianxiao's head. Bang! With a single punch, Lu Tianxiao's head was smashed into the cracks in the ground. His skull caved in and cracked, and he couldn't be more dead. Lu Tianxiao is dead. Everyone looked at Lu Tianxiao's corpse that had been stuffed into the cracks in the ground, and then they turned to look at the skinny, purple-robed young man. All of them were shocked. The purple robe on Du Xiaofu's shoulder was torn, and there were some faint green marks on his bare skin. They were left behind by Lu Tianxiao's claw. There were some injuries, but they weren't serious. He had relied on his powerful physical strength to block the claw print. However, Du Xiaofu knew in his heart that if Lu Tianxiao had been just a little bit stronger, there would have been several bloody holes on his shoulder. Du Xiaofu's skinny figure stood in the middle of the battlefield. His purple robe swept across, and his eyes shone with a faint golden light. It was sharp and terrifying. His cold gaze swept across the remaining Free Cloud sect members as he shouted, "Scram! The sect leader is dead too. Hurry up and run, run." The remaining Free Cloud sect members finally regained their senses. How would they dare to stay any longer? Immediately, they fled in panic. In contrast to the murderous aura from before, they were now like stray dogs, scrambling to escape. The last remaining Free Cloud sect member who was at the mysterious stage of meridians ran even faster, afraid that the purple-robed young man would attack him again. Ayo! Dozens of dark wolf horses also roared and galloped away. With incredible speed, the Free Cloud sect members and their dark wolf horses all fled in a hurry. Who? Many of the onlookers sucked in a breath of cold air. The purple-robed young man was so young, but his strength was so terrifying that it was shocking. The freckled lady at the entrance of the shop looked at the skinny figure in purple robes and was extremely shocked. Looking at the fleeing Free Cloud sect members, Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered. However, there was not much joy on his face. After retrieving a Qian Kun bag from Lu Tianxiao's corpse, Du Xiaofu decided to leave immediately. With such a huge commotion, he was afraid that it would attract the attention of the Black Fiend sect. If the Black Fiend sect were to recognize him, that would be the real problem. Compared to the Black Fiend sect, Free Cloud sect was nothing. "Kid, you've made such a mess of my shop. Don't tell me you're thinking of leaving just like that." Just as Du Xiaofu was about to leave, an old voice suddenly sounded out. From within the medicine hut, an old man dressed in gray robes walked out slowly. When he reached the entrance, he stretched lazily and squinted his eyes at the crowd of onlookers. He said plainly, "Today, there are quite a number of people at the entrance of my medicine hut. It's rare to see so many people." The freckled lady who had been standing at the entrance of the shop looked at the old man in gray robes who had suddenly appeared beside her. Her eyes revealed a look of surprise. She had not noticed when the old man had approached her. In other words, if the old man was her enemy, he could have killed her without her noticing. What a strong old man. Could he be the legendary him? Thinking up to this point, she could not help but feel a sense of fear. She had not realized that the old man in gray robes had hidden his strength so well. Perhaps the old man in front of her was the legendary person that she and her grandfather were looking for. On the other hand, the skinny old man's eyes did not show any signs of surprise. His dark and wrinkled face did not show much emotion. It was as if he had already noticed the old man in gray robes approaching. Du Xiaofu's body turned sluggish. His gaze immediately turned towards the entrance of the medicine hut. It was the old man in gray robes who had been sleeping behind the counter. His gaze moved slightly before he politely said, "Shopkeeper, it was the Free Cloud sect that started the fight. I was only defending myself. I don't care about the Free Cloud sect or the Loose Dog sect. They were here to look for you. Now that the entrance of my medicine hut has been reduced to such a state, I naturally have to compensate you." The old man in gray robes looked at Du Xiaofu as he spoke. His voice was still calm, but there was a hint of age in it. Hearing the old man's words, Du Xiaofu was slightly taken aback. He wanted to keep the peace. Since the area around the medicine hut had indeed been destroyed, he could only nod his head helplessly. Following which, he asked the old man in gray robes, "Shopkeeper, how much do you want me to compensate?" "I will compensate you." The old man in gray robes smiled as he looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Kid, you are quite tactful. This old man will not make things difficult for you. Just now, You had a pretty good stone on you. Just compensate me with that stone. Continue to struggle. Chapter 185. Could it be that he could tell that the mountain peak rock was a demon stone? Wasn't that person still inside? Du Xiaofu had quite a few questions in his heart. His expression fluctuated before he quietly retracted his voice. He then looked at the gray-robed elder and said, "Shopkeeper, how can I compensate you with a broken rock? How about this, I'll compensate you with a few pills or elixirs." When he heard Du Xiaofu's words, an unknown emotion flashed across the gray-robed old man's seemingly turbid eyes. After which, he looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Brat, I am a man of my word. I will not say it a second time." His words were still extremely flat, without the slightest ripple. However, there was an attitude that left no room for doubt. There was a slight fluctuation in Du Xiaofu's eyes as he looked at the gray-robed old man. The inexplicable feeling in the old man's turbid eyes was also absorbed by Du Xiaofu's eyes. The gray-robed old man seemed to have no aura around him, but there was a faint aura that caused one's heart to tremble. This aura was extremely ferocious and it seemed to be able to affect one's soul. Huff! Du Xiaofu took a deep breath, his eyebrows furrowing slightly. His eyes then looked at the gray-robed elder and said, "Shopkeeper, I've already said that I can compensate you with a few pills or elixirs. As for the rock in my hand, sorry, I like it very much myself, so I won't part with it." After being rejected by Du Xiaofu, the gray-robed elder narrowed his eyes a little. After which, his gaze landed on the faint black imprint on Du Xiaofu's neck that was difficult to detect. He said, "Little fellow, although some things have been sealed, it is not the solution. Someone will eventually find them. If you attack again, I'm afraid that the seal will immediately become problematic. Why don't we go in and discuss it?" Hearing this, Du Xiaofu was shocked. This person was obviously talking about the Black Fiend's soul-chasing seal on his body. The Black Fiend's soul-chasing seal that had been sealed by Dongli Qingqing was unexpectedly seen through by this gray-robed elder. This was enough to prove that this elder was definitely not as calm as he looked. "Shopkeeper, there's no need for that." Du Xiaofu shook his head. The stranger this person was, the more Du Xiaofu didn't want to get too close to him. "Brat, don't speak too soon. Why don't we come in and talk? Maybe we can have a good talk. If you think you can leave, you can try." As soon as he finished speaking, the gray-robed elder turned around and walked into the shop. He didn't pay any more attention to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu stared blankly at the back of the gray-robed elder as he pondered in his heart. That gray-robed elder was definitely not an ordinary person. If he were to leave now, would he truly be able to escape? Furthermore, there were still people from the Black Fiend sect searching and hunting him down. However, the gray-robed elder wanted the demon's stone on him. Du Xiaofu naturally wasn't willing to let that happen. After hesitating for a moment, Du Xiaofu still walked towards the shop in the end. His faint intuition told Du Xiaofu that it would be very difficult for him to leave this place. As such, he could only go in and take a look. Walking to the entrance of the shop, Du Xiaofu, the skinny elder and the freckled lady brushed past each other. "Brat, thank you very much outside Dark Forest Town." As they brushed past each other, the skinny elder suddenly raised his head and looked at Du Xiaofu as he spoke. Du Xiaofu's footsteps paused as he entered the shop. He glanced to the side and carefully observed the skinny elder and the freckled lady for a while. During the intense battle between him and Lu Tianxiao, the elder and the freckled lady stood at the entrance and didn't retreat at all. Although one of them looked weak and the other had one foot in the grave, the two of them didn't even blink during the fight just now. How could they be ordinary old people and women? With a bitter smile on his face, Du Xiaofu knew that he had been too nosy outside Dark Forest Town. If he hadn't intervened, nothing would have happened to the two of them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have caused so much trouble. At this moment, even the demon stone was being targeted. It wasn't that he regretted intervening. Du Xiaofu didn't regret helping the old man and woman. However, his eyesight was still somewhat lacking. It seemed that he still needed to hone his eyesight. Looking at the skinny elder, a bitter smile appeared on his face as he said, "No need to thank me. It's my eyesight that's lacking." Ha! When he heard this, the skinny old man was slightly taken aback. After which, he smiled and said, "Young man, you are quite interesting. Your eyesight can be honed. However, this old man owes you a favor. You won't lose out." Du Xiaofu looked at the skinny old man. His eyes flickered, and then he looked straight at the skinny old man and said, "This old man's words are wrong. Sometimes, a favor is worth tens of thousands of gold, and sometimes, it's worthless. It depends on who owes the favor. What do you think?" The skinny elder was stunned for a moment. Then, he smiled and said, "What you said makes sense. It does make some sense. Just now, you said that you owe me a favor. I wonder if the favor that you owe me is worth tens of thousands of gold coins, or is it nothing?" Du Xiaofu looked directly at the skinny old man and asked. There was a slight smile on his resolute face. Ha 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 ha, the skinny elder didn't speak again. He only smiled with his tanned face. Du Xiaofu didn't speak either. Then, he turned around and entered the shop. "Grandpa, this kid is too rude to you." Looking at Du Xiaofu's back, the freckled lady glared at Du Xiaofu. "Interesting, and powerful. Ha." The skinny elder smiled and said to the freckled lady, I told you that this kid isn't someone that can be compared to those silk pants in our family. Come, let's go in and take a look." The freckled lady raised her eyes and pouted slightly. Then, she continued to follow behind the skinny elder. "Let's disperse. Free Cloud's sect is done for. However, I heard that Free Cloud's sect has a backer. I'm afraid that the backer of Free Cloud's sect will not let this matter rest. Let's disperse. Don't cause any trouble." As Du Xiaofu entered the shop, the crowd started to disperse. Since the show was over, there was nothing left to watch. Du Xiaofu walked into the shop. The gray-robed elder was leaning over the counter, tidying up the dust on the counter. When he heard Du Xiaofu's footsteps, he didn't even raise his head. Instead, he said softly, "Kid, hand over the stone and I won't make things difficult for you. I'm not giving it up." Du Xiaofu looked at the gray-robed elder's back and said, "You have no other choice. If you don't hand over the stone, you can forget about leaving." When the gray-robed elder heard this, he turned around and raised his head slightly to look at Du Xiaofu. His eyes were cloudy and dull, but gradually, there was a slight chill in them. Du Xiaofu didn't expect that the old man would turn hostile the moment he entered the shop. In fact, he had already expected this to happen. His face darkened as he said, "If you don't let me leave, then I can only tear down your medicinal hut and leave. You're so young, but you talk big." Just as he finished speaking, the gray-robed elder's cloudy eyes suddenly shone. An extremely powerful aura spread out and instantly enveloped Du Xiaofu. Just as this powerful aura surged out and oppressed him, a pale golden light immediately wrapped around Du Xiaofu's body, resisting the powerful but oppressive aura. Then, the look in his eyes changed greatly. Soul Symbol Master. Du Xiaofu could tell from the gray-robed elder's terrifying aura that this person was actually a Soul Symbol Master. Moreover, he was an absolutely powerful Soul Symbol Master. Bullying a kid at your age, I'm afraid you're taking advantage of your seniority. A faint voice sounded. The skinny elder slowly walked in. His eyes fell on the gray-robed elder and Du Xiaofu with a slight smile. "If you're not going to buy anything, then leave early." The gray-robed elder's eyes also fell on the skinny elder. He smiled faintly and said, "If someone knows that the North Vanquishing Prince has appeared in the dark forest, I'm afraid that there will be a few old fellows here who will be very interested." The skinny old man smiled faintly when he heard this. After which, he looked at the gray-robed old man and said, "If anyone knows that the great Medicine King is in the dark forest, I'm afraid that the small dark forest town will soon be filled with people." Medicine King, North Vanquishing Prince. When Du Xiaofu heard this, he looked at the two elders. His heart trembled slightly. It seemed that his luck today was not very good. He had encountered two elders who seemed to have an extraordinary background. His luck was really bad. When the gray-robed elder heard this, he immediately withdrew his aura and his attention fell on the skinny elder. As the gray-robed elder withdrew his aura, the pressure on Du Xiaofu also immediately disappeared. The faint golden light on his body also slowly withdrew. His eyes looked left and right at the two elders, happy to watch the show. After looking at the skinny elder for a while, the gray-robed elder's face revealed a smile and said, "Even if someone knows that I'm in the dark forest, so what? At most, I'll just change to another place. But you, the North Vanquishing Prince, are different. Your old injuries are serious. If you don't treat them, you will die in half a year or at most 3 years. If someone knows that the North Vanquishing Prince's old injuries are serious, your strength will be greatly reduced. I'm afraid that you won't be able to walk out of the dark forest in half a year." Cough cough, the skinny old man coughed a few times. His stick-like body heaved violently as he coughed. It was as if his body would break at any moment. He looked at the gray-robed old man and said, "You can tell at a glance. The Medicine King is indeed worthy of his reputation. It's time for the 4th watch. Little you, continue to update. I will be very conscious, hee. Chapter 186. Medicine King, my grandfather came to the dark forest to ask for your help. Please help. The freckled woman said to the gray-robed old man. Her eyes were full of respect. I've stopped saving people a long time ago. You've been poisoned by the extremely cold and poisonous dark ice frost serpent. That serpent must be the terrifying monster in the Arctic glacier. Not to mention that I'm not in the mood to save people right now. Even if I was in the mood to save people, I wouldn't be able to save them. All of you, go back. The King of Medicine glanced at the freckled woman and waved his robe. Medicine King, the freckled woman wanted to say something, but the skinny old man waved his hand to stop her. He said softly, "Fair, don't make it difficult for the Medicine King. I just want to walk around and try my luck. No one can cure the dark ice dragon's poison. Let's go." Grandfather, the freckled woman's eyes lit up. She bit her lips and looked at the Medicine King, pleading, "Medicine King, legend has it that there is no one you cannot save. You are my grandfather's last hope. Please help, no matter the cost. Don't have any hope. If the old man behind your empire is still here, maybe he can suppress the dark ice dragon's poison and delay it for 2 or 3 years. Go, don't bother me anymore." The Medicine King waved his hand and seemed to be a little impatient. Hearing this, the freckled woman's hope was extinguished. Her eyes dimmed. "Sorry to bother you." The skinny old man nodded to the Medicine King and said to the freckled woman, "Fair, let's go. We have been to a lot of places. It is time to go home." The freckled woman's eyes were dim. Maybe she was used to being disappointed. She slowly turned around and supported the skinny old man to leave. Suddenly, the skinny old man turned around and looked at Du Xiaofu. He opened his mouth and said, "Young man, do you still want to buy something? If not, do you want to come with me?" Du Xiaofu heard this and was a little surprised. Then, a smile appeared on his face. He stepped forward and followed the old man. At the same time, he opened his mouth and said, "That is my intention. Kid, our business isn't over yet. Let's leave in a while. Otherwise, don't blame me for bullying you." The Medicine King appeared in front of Du Xiaofu, blocking him. His aura spread out again, his gray robes fluttering in the wind. His aura could even affect one's soul. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's mind shuddered. An invisible energy enveloped him and crushed him. Under the pressure, he found it difficult to move. It was as if the entire space had been locked down. What was more important was the discomfort in his soul. This restricted space caused his soul to tremble and feel dizzy. He couldn't muster up any strength and was unable to move. King of Medicine, don't lower yourself to the level of a junior. The skinny old man's voice rang out. At some point in time, he had left the freckled woman's support. His skinny body, which looked like a mulberry stick, walked into the space where Du Xiaofu was bound. So strong. Du Xiaofu was shocked. The skinny old man known as the North Vanquishing King was not hindered in the slightest in this comfortable space. This kind of silent and untraceable display of strength was enough to be valiant. North Vanquishing Prince, are you trying to make things difficult for me? The Medicine King's face darkened. Ha, Medicine King, you're too serious. It's just that I owe this kid a favor. Don't make things difficult for me. I won't tell anyone about your whereabouts. Let's just forget about it. The skinny old man said indifferently. His withered hand reached out to Du Xiaofu. He said slowly, Kid, if you want to go with me, then come with me. North Vanquishing Prince, you've gone too far. The Medicine King said softly. The invisible binding force around them suddenly increased. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's body trembled. It was as if his body was under heavy pressure from all directions. His internal organs were also shaken. Medicine King, why do you have to make things difficult for a junior? The skinny old man's hand, which was reaching out to Du Xiaofu, seemed to be hindered by the binding space. His speed slowed down for a moment. However, a cold aura faintly discernible spread out from his skinny body and resisted the binding space. Then, the hand that was reaching out to Du Xiaofu seemed to pass through space and was about to grab Du Xiaofu's shoulder. All of this took a long time to describe, but in reality, it happened in less than 2 breaths. Chi! At the same time, a symbol light rushed out from nowhere following a soft rushing wind sound. After which, it directly pierced through the air and directly pierced towards the skinny old man's hand that was reaching towards Du Xiaofu's shoulder. A pressure that caused a piercing pain to one's soul suddenly surged out from nowhere. The skinny old man had no choice but to withdraw his hand. However, at this moment, a silver-white light swept out from his palm. There were also runes spreading out and directly collided with the rune light. A bone-chilling pressure also spread out. Chi 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 chi. The collision of the 2 runes did not cause any ripples. Instead, the 2 runes shattered and the energy silently dissipated. Dang dang. Only at this moment, Du Xiaofu, who was in the middle of it, felt his soul become extremely dizzy. There was also an icy cold aura that directly swept over his body. Although the binding space around him had disappeared, his body still staggered a few steps back. Chi! The skinny old man's figure immediately appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. His dark and wrinkled old face looked at the Medicine King in front of him and said, Medicine King, you have concealed your identity in this place for so many years. I'm afraid that you do not wish to casually change places. Why don't you let this little fellow follow me? The Medicine King's expression was extremely gloomy. Suddenly, he looked at the skinny old man and smiled faintly, All right, I will let you go. However, we will have to see if this little fellow is willing to follow you. Little fellow, follow me. The skinny old man turned his head to look at Du Xiaofu. Before he finished speaking, the expression in his eyes suddenly changed. On Du Xiaofu's neck, the originally indistinguishable black imprint suddenly flashed. After which, it appeared like a black birthmark. This caused the skinny old man's eyes to be filled with shock as he said, It is actually the Black Fiend's Black Fiend's soul-chasing imprint. Little fellow, it seems that the Black Fiend's sect has already found you. Black Fiend's soul-chasing imprint, Du Xiaofu's heart was shocked. At this moment, he also felt an itch on his neck. It was as if it was being pulled by some invisible force. The black fiend's soul-chasing imprint that was sealed by Dongli Qingqing was slowly being undone. It was likely that once the black fiend's soul-chasing imprint was undone, the black fiend's sect would be able to easily find him. "It's you." Du Xiaofu stared at the Medicine King. The undoing of the black fiend's soul-chasing imprint was most likely related to this person in front of him. The Medicine King shook his head and said disdainfully, "I can indeed undo your seal, but it was not done by me. This is a special method of the Black Fiend's sect. I'm afraid that at this moment, there are experts from the Black Fiend's sect looking for you not far away. They used the Black Fiend's soul-chasing imprint on your body to undo the seal. I think that within a day, they will be able to find you." Hearing this, Du Xiaofu's eyes suddenly darkened. He did not expect the Black Fiend's sect to catch up with him so quickly. "Little fellow, leave that stone. I will help you completely remove the Black Fiend's soul-chasing imprint. In this dark forest, other than the few people from the Black Fiend's sect, there is really no one who can completely remove the Black Fiend's soul-chasing imprint on your body." After the Medicine King finished speaking to Du Xiaofu, he then looked at the skinny old man and said, "North Vanquishing King, can you bring this little fellow out of the dark forest? You should also know about the people from the Black Fiend's sect. With your current strength, I'm afraid that you won't be able to take advantage of them." Cough cough, the skinny old man coughed again and then said to the Medicine King, "I will only bring this little fellow out of here. That guy from the Black Fiend's sect is indeed not someone I want to provoke easily. As for other matters, it has nothing to do with me." "Ha!" The Medicine King smiled slightly and looked at Du Xiaofu, as if he had determined that Du Xiaofu would not dare to leave. He smiled and said, "Little fellow, you heard it. Do you still want to go with the North Vanquishing King? Little fellow, you have to consider it carefully. The favor I owe you is only worth it for me to bring you out of here. Whether you leave or not, this old man will not owe you any favors in the future." The skinny old man also said slowly to Du Xiaofu, "If you stay here, although the Medicine King is a little shameless, he will not take your life." Du Xiaofu frowned and his eyes moved slightly. Then, a faint smile appeared on his face. "I have a good point. If I like something, I will never give it to others. So what if I am being chased by the Black Fiend sect? Naturally, I will leave." As his voice fell, Du Xiaofu looked at the skinny old man and said, "Sir, whether you bring me out of this medicinal hut or not, I will leave this place today anyway." The skinny old man's eyes moved slightly, then he nodded and said, "In that case, let's go." As his voice fell, the skinny old man slowly walked away. "Little fellow, you have to consider it carefully. In less than a day, the people from the Black Fiend sect will definitely catch up to you." The Medicine King's face was a little ugly. It seemed that he did not expect that the purple-robed young man would rather be chased by the Black Fiend sect than leave the stone behind. Du Xiaofu looked at the Medicine King and said, "I have already been chased by the Black Fiend sect for a long time, but I am still alive." As his voice fell, he followed behind the skinny old man and left. However, he did not forget to be on guard against the Medicine King at all times. Then, under the Medicine King's gaze, the three of them walked out of the door. As he watched Du Xiaofu and the other two's figures disappear through the door, the Medicine King's aura once again returned to its tranquil state. His eyes moved slightly as he softly muttered, "This little fellow is not simple. His entire body is extraordinary. That stone, could it really be a demonic stone? It can be considered Monday. Looking for recommendations, looking for fresh flowers. Little you will continue to work hard tomorrow." Chapter 187. Layer upon layer of forest, the cries of ferocious beasts could be heard from time to time. Swoosh swoosh. Outside dark forest village, within a dense forest dozens of li away, a streak of light suddenly shot through the air, landing in a patch of forest. The light receded, revealing three figures. In the middle was a skinny old man with a dark complexion, on the right was a freckled woman whose freckles and dark complexion made it difficult to look at her directly, and on the left was a purple-robed young man with a thin figure. These three were none other than Du Xiaofu, the skinny old man known as North Vanquishing King, and the freckled woman who had come out from Dark Forest Village's herb hut. Cough cough. Within the forest, the skinny old man coughed, his skinny chest heaving up and down violently. Then, he said to Du Xiaofu, "All right, I'll bring you here." Du Xiaofu clasped his fists and bowed, then said to the skinny old man, "Thank you for your help. I will repay your kindness in the future. I'm only returning your favor, no need to thank me." The skinny old man gazed at Du Xiaofu, his gaze pausing for a moment, then said, "The black fiend's soul-chasing seal on your body has already been exposed. The experts of the Black Fiend's sect should be able to catch up very easily. I don't know how you managed to provoke the people of the Black Fiend's sect. Within the dark forest, provoking the Black Fiend's sect does not seem to be a wise choice." Du Xiaofu bitterly smiled. When the Black Fiend's sect was mentioned, a chill spread across his handsome face. He said, "No matter what the reason is, there will be a day when they won't feel good. But at least for now, you still need to hide. You will only know what will happen in the future." The skinny old man raised his head slightly, looking straight into Du Xiaofu's eyes, and said, "How about this, you follow me back? Even if you have the Black Fiend's soul-chasing seal on your body, as long as you leave the dark forest and come to this old man's place, the people of the Black Fiend's sect will not be able to do anything to you. In the future, when you are strong enough, you can take your revenge. At that time, this old man might even be able to lend you a helping hand, so you won't have to do it alone." Du Xiaofu did not think too much of it. Looking at the skinny old man, he shook his head and bowed, "The editor, Alim, but I have to attend to this old man's black fi to come to the dark forest. To return. Time, 10, King, Soul-Chasing King, to Atlas King, to Zhao, to Old to King to the Black Fiend." The fiend's hearing. Du Xiaofu could only helplessly accept the freckled lady's words. The king scaled demonic tiger, Dai Xingyu, and the tomboy's whereabouts were unknown, and he still had to go to Tianwu Academy. It was impossible for him to leave the dark forest first. If he stayed in the dark forest, he could at least inquire about Dai Xingyu and the tomboy's whereabouts. If something were to happen to them and he were to leave the dark forest, he would feel uneasy for the rest of his life. Everyone has their own ambitions. We cannot force others to do something against their will. On the other hand, the skinny old man did not show much of a reaction. He turned to the freckled lady and said, "Fair, I remember that you have the crown lotus and the frost jadeite tangerine flower with you. This lad is looking for those two spiritual herbs, why don't you give them to him?" "Yes, grandfather." The freckled lady nodded her head and took out a qiankuan bag from her bosom. This qiankuan bag was very unique and exquisite. She took out a palm-sized green lotus and a translucent spiritual flower. Instantly, the energy of the spiritual herbs fluctuated, and a multicolored glow spread out. "Here you go. My goodwill is treated as ill intent." The freckled lady seemed to still be angry at Du Xiaofu's rejection of her grandfather. She passed the spiritual herbs in her hand to Du Xiaofu and glared at Du Xiaofu with hatred in her eyes. "Thank you, old mister." Du Xiaofu received the green lotus and the translucent spiritual flower. These were the crown lotus and the frost jadeite tangerine flower that he was looking for. Although these two spiritual herbs were not as valuable as the black flame spirit ginseng and the golden plum, they were definitely not cheap. He lifted his head to look at the skinny old man and said, "Old mister, these spiritual herbs are extraordinary and I do not dare to take them for free. Why don't I exchange them with some spiritual herbs?" "What kind of spiritual herbs does old mister need?" "Small matter, there is no need." The skinny old man shook his head. His tanned face seemed to have weathered the elements and was covered in wrinkles. His gaze did not waver as he looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "The black fiend's soul-seeking seal on your body has already been removed by someone. This old man will help you seal it again. Although I'm afraid that it will be removed by the people from the Black Fiend sect again, it should be able to delay them for 1 or 2 more days. You will have to rely on yourself for the rest. Deep in the forest, on a mountain peak. Several hundred figures appeared on a mountain peak. There were 3 people at the front, a black-clothed old man over 50 years old, a black-clothed young man, and an old man in black robes in the middle. He appeared to be in his 60s and had long brown hair. Waves of faint black light spread around the old man with long brown hair. It was faintly discernible as it wrapped around his body. An energy that shook one's soul spread, causing many large men behind him, who were not strong enough, to tremble intensely. As the brown-haired old man's hand seals changed, he waved the wide sleeves of his black robe, and a faint black energy suddenly swept out from the sleeves. Then, it lingered around the changing hand seals. Suddenly, a strange fluctuation rippled out from the fluctuating light and the flickering of the talisman characters. Black Fiend Soul-Seeking Seal. The old man cried out softly. At the same time, he suddenly bit the tip of his tongue. A mouthful of essence blood was spat out from his mouth and directly landed on the faint black energy between the hand seals. Woo-woo. Suddenly, a humming sound was emitted from the faint black energy. It was like waves of cold wind that caused one's heart to tremble. In an instant, a frightening baleful aura was released. The eyes of the hundreds of large men behind him trembled at the same time. Swoosh! Suddenly, a wave of black energy fluctuated, as if it was about to faintly shatter. The complexion of the old man with long brown hair also changed abruptly. His hand seals condensed once again and another mouthful of essence blood was spat out from the tip of his tongue. The faint black energy intensified once again. After which, it soared into the sky and rushed towards the left side of the sky. However, in the end, it seemed to be blocked by something invisible. It exploded in midair and turned into surging evil aura symbol energy. After which, it slowly dissipated. Dang dang. The old man staggered back a step. His expression also became a little more serious. District Elder, how is it? The 50 black-clothed old man immediately stepped forward and asked. An expert intervened and sealed the Black Fiend's soul-chasing seal on that person's body. However, although it is affected, it is not to the extent that we cannot find those people. We have already found the general direction. When the time comes, we will be able to find them after spending some time. The brown-haired old man said in a deep voice. His face was quite gloomy, causing people to feel a chill when they looked at him. Then quickly go and find them. The treasure must be on those people. We must find the treasure as soon as possible. The black-clothed young man hurriedly said. Use the flying mounts and search for those people. The brown-haired old man said softly. Flap flap. In a short period of time, over a dozen huge flying monstrous beasts flapped their wings. The whistling wind caused the air currents to become like a storm. After which, they rapidly swept into the sky. Du Xiaofu was seated cross-legged on a rock within a dense forest. His body was enveloped by a bone-chilling icy energy radiance. The skinny old man's hand seals were constantly changing. After which, they transformed into runes that shot out and landed on Du Xiaofu's neck. Wave after wave of icy rune light rushed into Du Xiaofu's neck, as though wanting to freeze Du Xiaofu's neck into an ice cube. However, the black seal was gradually concealed by the icy rune energy. Even so, faint traces of it could still be seen. Alright, the Black Fiend's soul-chasing seal has been sealed. However, it can buy you at most 1 or 2 days. Take care of yourself. After the skinny old man's voice sounded, Sang's stick-like body slowly stood up. His mouth was coughing non-stop. Grandpa, you should try your best not to fight. It is not good for your body. The freckled lady stepped forward to support the skinny old man. If her dark and yellow freckled face could be removed, just her facial features alone would definitely make her appear like a delicate rose. I'm fine. I won't die yet. This body of mine can still be used for a period of time. The skinny old man smiled and said. The icy aura around Du Xiaofu disappeared. He also stood up. Looking at the skinny old man, gratitude filled his eyes as he said, "Thank you, old sir. I will never forget your kindness today. There is no need to be so polite. Where there is cause, there is effect. We are also fated." The skinny old man smiled. After which, he waved his skinny wood-like hand and said, "There is not much time left. You should leave quickly. If you are able to survive, just remember this favor of mine in the future. As you have said, I wonder if this favor of yours is dog fart or worth tens of thousands of gold. Ha ha. This little one will take his leave first." Du Xiaofu looked at the skinny old man without saying anything. After which, he bowed. Mysterious energy surged under his feet and his body immediately rushed into the dense forest nearby and disappeared. This fellow really does not know how to appreciate kindness. Grandpa wants to save him but he actually does not appreciate it. Looking at Du Xiaofu's disappearing back, the freckled lady involuntarily pouted her mouth. The skinny old man smiled and said, "It is not that this brat does not appreciate kindness. He is just not someone who will stay in a small pond." The freckled lady helplessly glared at the skinny old man. She spoke in a somewhat coquettish manner, "Grandpa, you are still protecting him. You should not have intervened. It is not like you do not know about your own body. If you carelessly intervene in the future and affect your body, I will ignore you. It is time for the first watch. Little you, continue writing. Fresh flowers are in urgent need. Great God Xiao Bing has repeatedly burst my chrysanthemum. Begging for fresh flowers, I will continue to fight." Chapter 188. You little girl. The skinny old man smiled faintly, his face somewhat lamenting as he said softly, "If those spoiled brats at home could be half as good as you, then I would be satisfied. Unfortunately, all of them are only good for looks but not good for anything. Although a few of them can be considered average, they are still lacking by a bit. Grandpa, you are asking too much of them. Besides, I will still be at home." The freckled girl smiled, revealing her neat teeth that were as white as jade. The skinny old man looked at the freckled girl, then smiled and said, "You little girl are at home now, but girls will have to marry sooner or later." "I won't marry. I said I will serve Grandpa for the rest of my life," the freckled girl said shyly. "Sigh, you little girl." The skinny old man sighed softly, his eyes full of love. He then raised his brows slightly and looked towards the depths of the forest. Seeing this, the freckled girl pursed her lips and said softly, "Grandpa, if you really can't let it go and have a fondness for talent, why don't you just kidnap that brat and bring him home? I don't believe he can overturn the heavens." "Ha!" The skinny old man instantly laughed. "Little girl, are you trying to steal the bride? If you don't mind that the brat is a few years younger than you, then today this old man really will help you kidnap that brat and bring him home to be your husband. What do you think? This old man really likes that brat." "Grandpa, that's not what I meant. That brat is as stubborn as a donkey and doesn't know how to appreciate others' kindness. I don't like him at all," the freckled girl said shyly. A smile appeared on the skinny old man's dark face, then he said softly to the freckled girl, "If that brat can escape this calamity, then he will truly be an extraordinary person in the future. My help today will not be in vain. In order to become a true expert, talent is very important, but training is essential. If that brat really wants to go home with me today, then even if he can become an expert in the future, his achievements will be limited and he will not be able to set foot on the true peak. He will be stuck by himself." The freckled woman seemed to understand but not fully. Her eyes were bright as she said, "Grandfather, he is indeed very strong. However, with his strength, it will be difficult for him to escape the Black Fiend's sex pursuit in the dark forest. Don't worry, the Medicine King is not that easy to deal with. With the addition of the Black Fiend's sect, that brat is actually much safer. The rest will depend on how that brat deals with them. The wrinkles on the skinny old man's face rippled as he softly said to the freckled woman, "Girl, if you can see that young man again in the future, then if he needs help in the future, help him as much as you can. Make him owe you more favors. He is not the kind of person who doesn't return favors. Perhaps in the future, he will be able to help you a lot." The freckled woman didn't say anything. On her dark and freckled face, her bright black eyes were deep and transparent. They were black like ink and white like jade, and they flickered like dewdrops. At dusk, in the continuous range of mountains, a cliff wall pressed down like an azure dragon with its head held high. It was so high that it looked like it was about to collapse. At the peak of the mountain, the continuous forest covered the precipice. Clusters of unknown wild flowers jumped out from the rocky cliffs. In a hidden cave, Du Xiaofu lifted a huge rock and blocked the entrance of the cave. Then, he sat down cross-legged in the dark cave. Then, Du Xiaofu took out a large pile of elixirs from his qiankuan bag. Among them were the frost jade orange flower and crown lotus that he had obtained from the freckled woman. Multicolored light spread out, illuminating the cave. The energy fluctuations of the elixirs made Du Xiaofu have an impulse to swallow them whole. Looking at the large pile of elixirs in front of him, Du Xiaofu could only hold back his saliva. The reason why he was looking for the frost jade orange flower and crown lotus was because he wanted to refine an elixir. This time, the elixir that Du Xiaofu wanted to refine was not for himself, but for his brother, Zhen Qingchun. From his drunkard father, Du Xiaofu knew that Zhen Qingchun's primordial spirit had been exhausted to the extreme, causing him to fall into a deep sleep. It would take some time for him to wake up. However, it might take a year or two, or even 3 to 5 years, or even longer. However, if he could find some elixirs that could restore the primordial spirit, he would be able to recover faster. Therefore, Du Xiaofu had been looking for elixirs that were beneficial to the primordial spirit. He wanted to refine a type of soothing spirit powder. A while ago, he was only missing the crown lotus and the frost jade orange flower. Therefore, Du Xiaofu wanted to make a trip to Dark Forest Town to look for them. The soothing spirit powder was an animal-grade elixir that could greatly increase one's mental energy. Du Xiaofu did not know if the soothing spirit powder would be of any use to his brother, Zhen Qingchun, but for now, this was the best he could do. Elixirs and pills that could enhance one's mental strength were extremely rare in all kinds of businesses. They were absolutely scarce, and the supply simply couldn't meet the demand. It was difficult to purchase them. In the Lanling Prefecture city, Du Xiaofu had inquired about the soothing spirit powder, but he did not find any suitable elixirs. Not to mention the high price, one had to book a long time in advance. Therefore, he could only refine it himself. At this moment, in the dark forest, Du Xiaofu was constantly being pursued by the Black Fiend's sect. In his heart, he was thinking that if big brother Zhen Qingchun was here, perhaps he would be much more relaxed, and perhaps wouldn't be in such a sorry state. These elixir ingredients are hard to come by. I hope I don't fail. Looking at the pile of elixir ingredients in front of him, Du Xiaofu started to feel nervous. If the refining failed, losing these elixir ingredients would be a small matter, but his brother, Zhen Qingchun, waking up and recovering was a big matter. He had to wake him up and recover as soon as possible. Whew. Calming himself down, Du Xiaofu took a deep breath, condensing his hand seals. Immediately, a spiritual stove and symbol cauldron condensed in front of him. Blazing flames rose from the inside of the cauldron, and an extremely powerful aura spread out from the cauldron. Let's start refining the soothing spirit powder. With a wave of his hand, a suction force immediately gushed out from his palm, sucking an elixir ingredient into his palm, before lightly throwing it into the spiritual stove symbol cauldron. Walala! That elixir ingredient was enveloped by the flames of the spiritual stove symbol cauldron, and immediately started to wither under the high temperature. Finally, drops of light green liquid started to drip out, slowly falling to the bottom of the spiritual stove symbol cauldron, spreading a faint multicolored light, as the medicinal energy fluctuated intensely. Then, the second elixir ingredient was thrown into the spiritual stove symbol cauldron by Du Xiaofu. The flames inside the spiritual stove symbol cauldron were blazing, as if they had a life of their own. For this kind of refining, if the flame's temperature was a bit higher, it would be enough to completely burn the elixir ingredient into ashes. If the flame's temperature was a bit lower, it wouldn't be enough to refine the elixir ingredient's elixir ingredient. Therefore, this kind of refining required an extremely strict control of mental force, and consumed a great deal of mental energy. No mistakes could be made. Time slowly passed, and after a few hours, all the elixirs in front of Du Xiaofu, including the frost jadeite tangerine flower and the crown pure lotus, had already been refined by Du Xiaofu into elixir ingredient, floating inside the spiritual stove symbol cauldron. The second step. Du Xiaofu didn't dare relax in the slightest, and focused all his attention on controlling the temperature inside the spiritual stove symbol cauldron. At this time, he had to be even more careful than when refining the elixir ingredient. At this time, the elixir ingredient inside the spiritual stove symbol cauldron had a large amount of elixir ingredient. As long as the temperature was a bit higher, it would be burnt into nothing, and all his previous efforts would be wasted. If the temperature was a bit lower, he wouldn't be able to completely refine the elixir ingredient. Hoo. Inside the spiritual stove symbol cauldron, the flames whistled, and as time passed, the elixir ingredient was filled with various impurities. Following Du Xiaofu's mental control, the flames inside the spiritual stove symbol cauldron fluctuated like living creatures, wrapping the elixir ingredients' impurities, before burning them into nothingness. Finally, the elixir ingredients volume became smaller and smaller, but the elixir ingredients fluctuations became more and more violent. In the end, multicolored light filled the air. After doing all this, Du Xiaofu's face was a lot paler. At this time, he couldn't afford any accidents. Du Xiaofu continued to condense and change his hand signs, concentrating on controlling the spiritual stove and the spiritual liquid inside the cauldron, which had already been purified of impurities, started to fuse with each other. Zizi, along with the envelopment of the flames, the different spiritual liquids started to gradually fuse together, and a sizzling sound could be heard from the inside of the cauldron. A faint multicolored light burst out, and smoke started to surge out. You must succeed. Du Xiaofu held on to a belief in his heart, and that was that he absolutely could not fail. He focused all of his attention on the refinement. During this process, Du Xiaofu's energy consumption became greater and greater, and his face became paler and paler. In this way, time slowly passed, and the various spiritual liquids inside the spiritual stove and symbol cauldron finally started to fuse together. Although the process was tedious and complicated, Du Xiaofu still managed to persevere through it, especially the last step, which was completed in one go without the slightest pause. If Zhen Qingchen saw this scene at this moment, he would probably feel aggrieved. Drowning God powder, gather. At the last moment, Du Xiaofu condensed his hand signs, and the profound energy all over his body seemed to be poured into the spiritual stove and symbol cauldron. Surging flames soared to the sky, and a powerful force was suddenly released. Bang! At the time the various spiritual liquids were completely fused, the whole spiritual stove and symbol cauldron suddenly shook violently, and a multicolored light soared to the sky, accompanied by a series of runes. The multicolored light spread out, and the runes changed, rendering the whole cave beautiful and magnificent. The spiritual liquid inside the spiritual stove and symbol cauldron was now sparkling and translucent, and its medicinal power was so rich that the spiritual stove and symbol cauldron were on the verge of exploding. Success! What powerful fluctuations of medicinal power! At the time the sparkling and translucent spiritual liquid finally condensed, it was already the size of an infant's fist. The astonishing fluctuations of energy were breathtaking, causing Du Xiaofu to salivate. If he was able to swallow this drowning god powder, he was afraid that his cultivation as a spiritual talisman master would definitely increase by a lot. Many thanks to Brother E Wooming for the 100,000 reward, and to Beauty Feng Yu for the 10,000 reward. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.